Chapter 26-22. The sage couldn't stay here any longer. He was worried that he would collapse and explode at any moment. His body flashed as he flew up and said in the sky, "Your Excellency Archer God, I have another important matter to discuss with you alone." Then, the saint disappeared. The us he was talking about included the elf Archer God. The Archer God walked to Shuelehan and the Demon Empress and said in a low voice, "Don't you have any intention of talking to me?" The Demon Empress said lightly, "You're not stupid. Everything depends on your judgment. Archer God, I admit that your cultivation is on par with ours, but this is not a reason for us to give you special treatment. If you want us to explain anything to you, you are not qualified to do so." The Archer God couldn't help but smile bitterly. Now that things had come to this, he could vaguely feel that he had done something wrong. However, the road ahead was still unclear. He couldn't find the right direction for now. The doubts in his heart were still there. However, the hatred in his heart was strangely not as sharp as before, and there was no room for him to turn it around. In that case, take care. The Archer God flew up. At this moment, he received a telepathic message from Shuelehan. "If you really want to talk to the Saint Emperor alone, it's better to call a few of your brothers as witnesses. This is good for everyone." The Archer God couldn't help but pause in midair. He turned around in surprise and looked at Shuelehan. Then, with a swoosh, he disappeared without a trace. He understood what Shuelehan meant, but he couldn't believe it. The Saint Emperor, the #1 person in the imperial court, was actually such a person. If he was really so despicable and shameless, how could he have been the Saint Emperor for so long? Especially today, he had eliminated the biggest hidden danger in the imperial court, the 10,000 saints' spiritual body. The Saint Emperor didn't seem like a bad person, but neither did the East Sovereign. But the Saint Emperor said that the East Sovereign was a bad person, and the East Sovereign also said that the Saint Emperor was the bad person. Then, who was the real bad person? A great traitor was loyal. Was this the kind of person they were talking about? Could it be that meeting the Saint Emperor alone this time would really be dangerous? Was this possible? Was this impossible? After the Archer God left, he pondered over this question. He thought for a long time. In the end, he decided that he was not the only one who could decide the fate of the elven race. The other brothers also needed to be witnesses. He needed to make a judgment. They needed to make corresponding decisions. Therefore, he decided to bring his brothers along to meet the sage. He wanted to gather all the higher-ups of the elf race to meet with the sage. Wouldn't this be more respectful? In this world, only the 4 elven gods were known as the 4 strongest experts of the elven race. However, no one knew that the strongest expert of the elf clan was actually the elf clan. In fact, there were 5 of them. There was another god, the dark elf god. However, this god of darkness was always hidden in the dark. Therefore, those who knew of his existence also knew that there were 5 strongest powerhouses in the elf clan, and they were the 5 elven gods. As for those who didn't know, they only knew of the 4 elven gods. In fact, those who knew about the 4 elven gods were already experts who had reached a certain level in the world. "You've gained quite a bit today, haven't you?" Shuelehan looked at Xie Danqiong. "It's all right." Xie Danqiong smiled. When these things are handed over to Big Brother, they will naturally become more valuable. The Demon Empress asked curiously, "Xie Danqiong, will all the things that you and your brothers have gained be handed over to Chu Yang? Have you ever thought of studying them yourself?" Xie Danqiong said frankly, "Of course we have thought about it and studied it, but we didn't get any results. We don't seem to have the talent. Fortunately, Big Brother is also exploring. When he has formed a fixed theory or experience, he will teach it to us. Our future will definitely be separated. Big Brother also hopes that no matter where we are, no matter what skills we have, we will have the power to protect ourselves, but it's still not possible now. It's still far from the time when we can calm down and study these things without any distractions. Therefore, these directions can only be pushed back. Of course, there's another reason. If we hand these things over to Boss, we can immediately use them to their fullest potential. However, if we're left to fumble about on our own, we'll have to bear too many consequences of failure. And these consequences are the destruction of these treasures. The losses outweigh the gains. Xie Danqiong said lightly, the great heavenly devil war is imminent. We can't afford to lose anymore. The demon empress couldn't help but sigh enviously. Having such brothers by our side really makes one envious. Xie Danqiong smiled proudly. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a furious scolding. Xie Danqiong, you little bastard. How dare you? The three of them turned their heads and looked over, only to see Zi Xiecheng rushing over like a whirlwind with a furious face. Xie Danqiong screamed when he saw the situation. His face was full of horror, and he turned to escape. What Xie Danqiong was most afraid of now was Zi Xiecheng. There was no one else. However, just at the moment when he was about to move, both sides of his waist actually went numb at the same time, and he couldn't move at all. Xie Danqiong turned his head in disbelief, looked at Dong Huang and the demon empress beside him, and said with extreme grief and indignation, You guys, just now, it was actually Dong Huang and the demon empress who took action at the same time to restrain this heavenly emperor ink cloud. As for the purpose, it was very simple and pure. It was obviously to let him accept Zi Xiecheng's punishment. Xie Danqiong obviously didn't expect such a thing to happen even in his dreams. However, looking around the heavenly imperial court, the only person who was worthy of Dong Huang and the demon empress attacking at the same time was at most Cloud Lord. Should the Jade Flower Emperor, Xie Danqiong, feel very proud? Why? Xie Danqiong asked in grief and indignation. He really couldn't think of why these two people would do this. Why would they treat him like this? He had just helped Shui Leihan, and even gave each of them a space ring full of good stuff. How could they turn their backs on him? This was too unreasonable. You took my things, accepted my gift, and in the blink of an eye, sold me out. What kind of explanation was this? They were still talking happily just now, and in the blink of an eye, they turned their backs on him mercilessly. Not to mention that you are Dong Huang, who has such a high status. Even if you are the most shameless hooligan, you would also have to take a break, right? Shui Leihan put his hands behind his back and said, Xie Danqiong, don't blame us. We are helping your sister-in-law now. As your sister-in-law's brother, even if you don't thank us, you shouldn't blame us, right? Don't blame you. I still have to thank you. Xie Danqiong looked sadly at this extremely shameless Emperor Dong Huang. At this moment, he almost burst into tears. Now that you have caught me, I have to wait to be beaten up. Yet I still have to thank you. How could there be such a thing in the world? Damn you, Dong Huang, can you be any more shameless? Energy would energy. Even if you are young, you don't have to be so indignant. The demon empress smiled. I also told you clearly that no matter who little Z wants to beat up, we will catch them. Even if Dong Huang doesn't help, I will help. She can beat them up however she wants. On this point, she has no principles and no bottom line. Xie Danqiong was dumbfounded and speechless. He was dumbfounded. Why was this so? However, he didn't have more time to think. Zi Xiecheng was already in front of him in a hurry. Before he could say anything, he saw Dong Huang and the demon empress lifting Xie Danqiong up at the same time. With an infinitely benevolent smile, they said, Little Z, you just want to beat this guy up to vent your anger, right? Here, I'll catch him for you. You can beat him up however you want, in whatever way you want to vent your anger. At this moment, Zi Xiecheng was stunned. After a while, she finally smiled with a red face and bowed. Uncle Shui, demonic concubine. How are you? Good, we're good. Shui Leihan and the demon empress smiled with gratification. It seemed that no matter what they did, no matter what they paid, they were already satisfied to hear the words Uncle Shui, demonic concubine. They were even a little overwhelmed by the favor. It was just a simple greeting. Was there a need to go so far? Then I'll take this guy back. Zi Xiecheng looked at Demon Xin and Shui Leihan with some admiration. Go, good girl. Ha ha. Do whatever you want, it's okay. The demon empress and Dong Huang hurriedly replied at the same time, it's okay. We can break his arms or legs. As long as we don't beat him to death, we can do whatever we want. We can do it until we're happy and satisfied. It's no big deal even if we really cripple him. Xie Danqiong suddenly felt a chill in his heart. What kind of saying is this? What exactly is going on? Why can't I understand? Zi Xiecheng smiled and then turned to give orders. Men, tie this guy up and bring him back. If he dares to do anything, break his legs. If he dares to struggle, break his arms too. Zi Xiecheng gave the order with a murderous look. Xie Danqiong closed his eyes sadly. Sister-in-law, please spare my life, spare your head. Zi Xiecheng said angrily, I'll go back and pack up first. When Chu Yang and Mo Tianji arrive, Xie Danqiong, a good day that you'll never forget is coming. Don't worry, I'm not interested in your life. I'm only interested in beating you up. As for whether Chu Yang and Mo Tianji are interested in your body or your life, it's hard to say. Xie Danqiong looked up at the sky and sighed sorrowfully. He looked at Zi Xiecheng with pleading eyes, trying to gain the sympathy of the people in front of him. But it seemed that no one cared about him. The tribulation soul transformed into a gust of wind, and it wrapped Xie Danqiong up before it left swiftly. Zi Xiecheng bowed and bade farewell to the demon empress. Then, she jumped up and rushed back to the heavenly armament pavilion. Looking at Zi Xiecheng's departure, the demon empress heaved a sigh of relief. This child is so good. I just realized that her brows are so similar to my sister Piaoping back then. It's as if they were cast from the same mold. Chapter 26-23. Xue Leihan frowned and said, You're wrong. Look at this child's eyes, expression, eyebrows, and nose bridge. They're all exactly the same as Zi Hao's. Especially her temperament, they can't be any more alike. Zi Hao should be comforted to have such a daughter. Xue Leihan was comforted and smiled. So you're saying, this girl is just like Zi Hao? She doesn't look like Ling Piaoping at all? The demon empress' gaze became dangerous. Xue Leihan kept his mouth shut and thought to himself, this is something that everyone can see, and you're still arguing. Besides, what's the use of arguing about this now? Justice is in people's hearts, how can you argue about right and wrong? Explain yourself. The demon empress' gaze became even more dangerous. Xue Leihan was helpless. She does look more like Ling Piaoping. Is that enough? Sigh, so justice is not in people's hearts, but strength. Look at your attitude, you're obviously unwilling. Male chauvinism. The demon empress was furious. If my daughter looks like Zi Hao, how can she get married? With your brother's looks, it's already a blessing that he can find a wife. How can my little Zi look like Zi Hao? What's with that gaze of yours? Xue Leihan said helplessly, What did you say? I can accept it if you say that about me, but you can't say that about my brother. What's wrong with his looks? Zi Hao is also quite a strong and handsome man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He can't be considered ugly. The demon empress left in a huff. Xue Leihan, you're really unreasonable. Justice is in people's hearts. How can you argue about right and wrong? What? What kind of world is this? Why did she say my lines out loud? Emperor Donghuang stood there for a long time and finally muttered gloomily, Who's the unreasonable one? They actually quarreled over this kind of thing. He shook his head helplessly and hurried back. Not to mention how Zi Xiecheng would punish Xie Danqiong when she returned. Let's talk about Chu Yang's side. He rushed towards the southern heaven forest like a meteor chasing the moon. Just when they were about 2,000 miles away from their destination, they heard an explosion without warning. They could only see a mushroom cloud of smoke rising in the distance. It was a ghastly sight. Everyone sighed helplessly when they saw it. This should be the final strike. Is it too late? Jimo's eyes were deep and filled with nervousness and apprehension. The battle is definitely over. I just don't know how it ended. Luo Kudi also let out a long sigh. His eyes became uneasy. Everyone was worried. Was Xie Danqiong dead or alive? After this battle, was everything all right? No one could blame Xie Danqiong for not having confidence in him. After all, the elven archer's prowess was too outstanding. He had never been defeated in the past. Xie Danqiong's cultivation had advanced a lot. But, everyone still didn't have much confidence in him in this battle. Only Mo Tianji was carefully listening to the movements. Chu Yang was also paying attention to the slightest change. After a while, finally, both of them heaved a sigh of relief. He revealed a reassuring smile. This battle is over. Danqiong is fine. Although I don't know the final result, at the very least, there were no casualties. The elven archer and Xie Danqiong are both fine. This point can be confirmed. Chu Yang let out a long sigh of relief. Why? Jimo and Luo Kudi were puzzled. Two fools. Tai Bu Tian smiled. If something really happened to Xie Danqiong, Big Sister Z would have already gone crazy. How could she still hold it in? It's so quiet. Since we didn't hear Big Sister Z's crazy voice and there weren't any subsequent outbursts of murderous aura, Xie Danqiong must be fine. Maybe Danqiong won this battle. That would be even more joyous. Jimo and Luo Kudi suddenly understood. Even if we don't take sister-in-law Z into account, if something happened to Xie Danqiong in place of Dong Huang and the Demon Empress would have already gone crazy. Even if the Archer God died, the Archer God's elven clan would have already gone crazy. Mo Tianji looked at the two of them as if he was looking at a fool. The situation is so calm now. How can the two of you be so scared? I really don't know what's in your heads. Tofu pudding? Jimo and Luo Kudi's faces turned red. They flew into a rage out of humiliation. So what if our heads are filled with tofu pudding? So what if we're tofu pudding? Didn't you just make an extra move? Do you believe that we'll join forces to beat you up? Seeing that the two of them were really about to go crazy, Mo Tianji also shrank his neck and stopped talking. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Chu Yang, who had just heaved a sigh of relief, couldn't help but laugh when he saw this. At this moment, a figure was rapidly approaching from afar like a shooting star. Moreover, they seemed to be fleeing in a sorry state, as if they were in a panic and did not know where to go. But this person's cultivation was definitely at the peak of the heavenly imperial court. Who was this person? Chu Le and Mo Qingwu had sharp eyes. They exclaimed at the same time, "Why does it look like Cloud Master?" It can't be. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji were startled when they heard this. They looked over at the same time. At this moment, that figure was already less than 10,000 feet away from them. The next moment, he would meet them. The person was indeed Cloud Master. But at this moment, his white robes were actually full of traces of mud. He also seemed to be a little distracted. There was a hint of anger and disappointment. Cloud Master's usual composure and elegance were nowhere to be seen. What was going on? Mo Tianji's heart skipped a beat. He immediately transmitted his voice to everyone. This person is most likely Cloud Master's clone. He must have encountered something big. At the same time, Chu Yang also said something similar. He transmitted his voice to everyone. This person is Cloud Master's clone. Although he's distracted, his strength is still intact. Everyone, be careful. Mo Tianji said, most likely with a hint of uncertainty. Yet, he gave a follow-up analysis. This was the quality of a think tank. Chu Yang, on the other hand, directly said with certainty, this must be Master Cloud's clone. He also analyzed Chu Yang's strength. This proved that the current Chu Yang was improving rapidly every day. At this moment, Cloud Master's clone also noticed them. An extremely fierce look flashed across his eyes. But then, he wanted to turn around and leave. Obviously, he didn't want to get into a conflict with them. This was very unexpected. This was because he seemed to be the one with the upper hand in terms of strength, right? Jimo's eyes turned, and he flew forward. Hey, excuse me, brother. I'd like to ask for directions. I don't know. I don't know you. Cloud Master's clone was full of impatience. As he spoke, he turned around and was about to leave. But this guy's reaction to Jimo's words proved one thing. This guy in front of them didn't know Chu Yang and the others. If this was the Saint Lord's true form, there was no way he wouldn't know Chu Yang and the others. In other words, this was another clone with a physical body and soul. It was just that they didn't know why such a secret clone would come here like a stray dog. Luo Kedi howled and rushed forward. Little. We're asking you nicely for directions. It's fine if you don't help, but you're ignoring us. We're all people of the pugilistic world. We're one family. The pugilistic world is an umbrella that shields us from the wind and rain. It's fine if you're so unreasonable, but why are you so rude? Howl. Luokedi's wife, the sacrificial maiden, immediately howled. She said loudly, "That's right. Little, hurry up and answer my master's question. Why are you so rude?" Jimo touched his chin. "Didn't your elders tell you to be polite to others? If you walk the pugilistic world like this, you'll be defeated sooner or later. If your family's elders didn't tell you this famous saying, then let us brothers tell you properly today." Chu Yang and Mo Tianji were instantly dumbfounded. Then, they almost burst out laughing. There was really nothing that these two couldn't make a joke out of. At such a time, they could still say such unreasonable words. Even Mo Tianji was a little impressed. "Do you want to die?" The Saint Lord's clone glared at them with a fierce gaze. "If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. If you don't want to die, hurry up and get lost." The East Emperor Demon Empress, Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun, the fairy archer god, and the heroes from all directions were surrounding them. Just a little bit more and they would be trapped. He had just luckily escaped from a situation where he was sure to die. Furthermore, he had to dig a hole to escape. This grievance and fear almost made him explode. Now, he had finally escaped with much difficulty, and retreated in one piece. His mind was still unsettled, and he was still worried that someone would chase after him. Because he knew his own situation, or perhaps his cultivation was not much weaker than any of the Tian-Q peak stage experts. But he was definitely not their match. Especially someone like the East Emperor Demon Empress. Because he was just a clone in the end. Even if their strength was similar, even if their souls were strong, he would never have the foundation that they had. That kind of luck. And these things were something that a clone could never truly obtain, therefore, he could only escape. But at this time, he met such a group of people again. At such a time, they actually asked him for directions. He was really going to faint. Was this a joke? Or were they just messing with him? "Friend, you're wrong to say that. Very wrong." Chu Yang frowned and stood up. "Our original intention was to ask you for directions. If you know, just say that you know. If you don't know, just say that you don't know. As for life and death, my brothers might be a little rude, but their intentions are good. Originally, I wanted to reprimand them. How can they treat strangers like this? Even if they have good intentions, they can't be like this. But, friend, aren't you a little too angry? I want to argue with you about this. How can we not talk about reason when we're in the martial world? How can we not be stabbed when we're in the martial world without reason?" Mo Tianji clasped his hands behind his back and secretly raised his thumb. Boss's words were too good. This was clearly the rhythm of tricking people to death. Chapter 26-24. Cloudmaster's clone frowned. Seeing that the other party's lineup was really not ordinary, and they also seemed to be really aggrieved and angry, he couldn't help but suppress his anger. He said, okay, I was wrong just now. What direction do you want to ask? Tell me. If I know, I'll definitely tell you in detail. If you don't, then I'm sorry." Chu Yang laughed heartily and said, "I just want to ask how to get to Southern Heaven Forest. I heard that a great battle of the century has erupted there. We rushed all the way here just to watch this great battle. There was still some movement just now, but it's all quiet now. Now that we're here, we have no goal at all. We don't know where to go." Cloudmaster's clone instantly heaved a sigh of relief. He pointed casually and said, "It's over there. Go ahead." Then he turned and was about to leave. "Wait." Chu Yang stopped him and said sincerely, "Thank you for showing me the way, friend. I see that you seem to have injuries on your body. I have a pill here. Can you see if it can help you a little? This is also a small token of my sincerity. Thank you." Cloudmaster's clone wanted to refuse at first, but just as he was about to speak, he saw the item in Chu Yang's hand and was instantly tempted. The pill in Chu Yang's hand emitted a strange fragrance. The pill halo was dense and colorful. It was actually the first time in his life that he had seen such a miraculous pill. Such a pill definitely had the power of creation. It would be a waste if he didn't take it. Moreover, the other party was so sincere. If he didn't take it, wouldn't he be letting himself down? He hesitated and said, "This pill is very valuable. This isn't good, is it?" Chu Yang's face was full of sincerity. "Meeting in the martial world is fate. Take it. It's really just a token of my sincerity. We're friends." As he spoke, he extended his hand forward. In his palm, the fragrance of the heavy pill became even stronger. As the pill fragrance circulated, it became even more captivating. Then, "Thank you." Cloud Master's clone hesitated, but he still extended his hand in the end. He went to Chu Yang's palm to take the heavy pill. "You're welcome." Chu Yang laughed heartily. "We're all brothers in the world." Cloud Master's clone's fingertips had already touched the heavy pill. He sighed with emotion. "I really didn't expect this. I can't believe there's still such an idiot in the martial world of Heaven Imperial Court. He actually gave away such a rare medicinal pill so casually, just to point out a path for others." Just as he was thinking, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his palm, just as an unforeseen event occurred. He hastily retreated. But it was too late. One of his arms, along with half of his shoulder, had completely lost its vitality and life force in an instant and turned into ashes. As for the pill in the other party's hand that was emitting endless temptation, it had unknowingly turned into an incomparably sharp long sword. At this moment, there were still traces of blood slowly flowing down the blade. Without a doubt. Obviously, this was a trap. The sage's clone immediately came to a realization. But it was too late for him to realize this. Mo Tianji's purple jade flute, Mo Qingwu's dreaming of a gentle dance saber, Jimo and Luo Kedi's swords, Rui Butong's short sword and Nirvana flame, and Sacrificial Maiden's wolf fangs, all attacked at the same time. It was almost at the same time as Chu Yang's sword. The Cloud Master's clone only had time to roar and spin half around desperately. His body was already viciously slashed by these weapons. He was completely caught off guard. It was completely out of his expectations. No matter what, he would never have thought that such a group of people he casually met was actually the king of hell who wanted his life. And every one of them was so strong. They were all smiles, trying to curry favor with him, and before they even turned around, they slash. What kind of people were these? The Cloud Master's clone screamed, "You! Who exactly are you people?" The intense pain was already about to drown his consciousness. His bodily functions were actually continuously losing his vitality. This kind of fear made him go crazy, and that kind of depression that he didn't know what was going on. Us? Of course, we're the ones who want your life. Chu Yang's body first turned into a series of afterimages. His calamity sword pierced into the heart of the sage's clone with incomparable precision. He said coldly, "This is the second Cloud Master's clone that we've destroyed." The Cloud Master's clone trembled violently, not only because of pain but also because of fear. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that with his powerful cultivation as a peak-level saint, he wouldn't even have a chance to retaliate against this group of people of unknown origins. He would be killed so easily. The calamity sword pierced into his heart and devoured him in the craziest and most extreme way. It devoured his body at a speed visible to the naked eye. His body was gradually shriveling, and his vitality was rapidly draining away. He roared crazily and even wanted to self-destruct. However, the calamity sword actually devoured all the power of self-destruction. He wanted to struggle, but none of the calamity brothers around him was inferior to him in terms of strength. They had long worked together to eliminate all his resistance. Mo Tianji, Jimo, Luo Kedi, and Rui Butong each used all their strength to clamp down on his limbs and even his body. Their weapons were already stuck in his body. Due to the intense struggle, they suffered backlash. However, everyone didn't care at all and focused on restraining him. Mo Qingwu's Qing Wu Dream Saber kept slashing down. Chula Er's Medicine King Ho kept striking like lightning. All the attacks and restraints were carried out at the same time. However, they also knew their limits. They definitely wouldn't let his body really split open. Once it split open, this kind of injury that would definitely kill an ordinary person would be equivalent to creating a clone to escape for such a peak-level expert. At such a time, any bit of unnecessary risk would be superfluous and unnecessary. The Calamity sword suddenly let out a clear cry, and the sword light suddenly flickered. The face of the saint's clone darkened as if it was dead. Then, his entire body made cracking sounds. Chu Yang's eyes flickered, and he focused even more. He was ready for battle. Finally, with a poof, the body of the saint's clone completely turned into a pile of powder and scattered in everyone's hands. However, a thin black light suddenly flew up. Chu Yang was already prepared for this. The Calamity sword once again performed the "so what if I slaughter the whole world" move. A majestic sword aura like a long dragon instantly split that black light into thousands of pieces. Then, another Calamity sword move Iron Wall and Copper Wall battle never end. Once this move was used, it immediately enveloped and sealed the entire space. The glaring cold sword light was completely white at this moment. It shone fiercely and continuously flickered as it slashed down. Finally, the spots of black light completely lost their ability to move, and quietly floated in mid-air. The Calamity sword laid across the air and once again released a huge suction force. The spots of black light were attracted over without any ability to resist. They were completely digested and devoured by the Calamity sword. This was the true spirit that truly belonged to the saint. Only by destroying this bit of true spirit could the true body of the sage be considered to have been destroyed. At this point, everyone could finally heave a sigh of relief. Mo Tianji let out a long sigh. Then, he revealed a smile on his face. I was lucky. This encounter was too coincidental. It was truly a coincidence. I never thought that we would be able to get rid of a saint's clone so easily. Jimo and Luo Kudi were also very excited, as if they hadn't had enough. To be able to destroy a clone of the saint without paying any price at all, this was simply a huge victory. Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, although we were lucky this time, everyone should be able to see that the strength of our brothers has finally improved after the battle at the extreme heaven. What's even more worth celebrating is that Jimo and Luo Kudi have also caught up. This is what everyone should be happy about. Everyone nodded. Back then, it was also because of a clone of the Cloud Lord that everyone was almost wiped out. And this time, even if it was a sneak attack, even if the opponent's mind was in a mess and he wasn't in a good state, everyone could feel that everyone's strength had made a miraculous leap. Because, against such an expert, if one's own cultivation level hadn't reached a certain level, even a sneak attack would be useless. But, with everyone's combined strength, they were able to get rid of him so easily. If this wasn't improvement, what was? When Jimo and Luo Kudi heard Chu Yang's praise, they couldn't help but laugh. Really, I just realized that I can completely keep up with the rhythm. This feeling is really too satisfying, ha ha ha. Really. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji nodded solemnly in agreement at the same time. Jimo and Luo Kudi laughed, but as they laughed, the rims of their eyes gradually turned red. The two of them laughed and hugged each other, burying their heads in each other's shoulders. Their laughter rang out continuously, but only the two of them could feel that the other's tears had actually soaked the clothes on their shoulders. For so many years, the two of them had always been lagging behind their brothers, always worried that they would fall behind and drag their brothers down. That feeling was really unbearable to recall. Now, that worry had finally disappeared completely. We've really caught up. We can really ride side by side with our brothers and advance together. The bitterness of this moment made the two of them almost want to hug each other and cry. Chu Yang sighed. He took a step forward and hugged his two brothers in his arms. He didn't say anything. Then, Rui Butong and Mo Tianji also hugged him without saying a word. The scene of 5 grown men hugging each other was originally very strange, but when Tai Butian and the others saw this, they felt touched and sad. They knew very well what kind of effort Jimo and Luo Kudi had put in to not fall behind. They also knew very well what kind of sacrifices Chu Yang and the others had made for their brothers, quietly waiting. Even if I can break through, I'll suppress it. When I can become stronger, I'll delay it, Just so, that I won't be so far away. Don't let my brother feel that I'm far away from him. That's all. Chapter 26-25. Now, everything had finally been completed. Everyone's hard work had paid off. There was no need to say anything. Everything was in silence. All right, now that everyone's done well, let's go to the southern forest immediately. Chuyong finally raised his head. The 5 brothers looked at each other and smiled. There were traces of tears on everyone's face. Immediately, they started to tease each other again. Ha 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 ha. This good for nothing, he actually cried just now and peed like a cat. You're talking about yourself, right? Me. The tears on my body were obviously caused by you. Ha ha ha. Everyone chased after each other towards the southern heaven forest amidst the sounds of fighting and quarreling. In the temporary stronghold of the Saint Palace, the saint was having a discussion with the arrow god and the others. Unlike the first time when the conversation was completely dominated by the saint, the arrow god had obviously come prepared this time. Beside him, there were 3 other people accompanying him. These 3 people were the 3 elven gods. They were also the other 3 elven gods that the world knew of. In other words, this meeting was unprecedented. The 4 elven gods came together and appeared at the same time. The saint smiled and looked at the 4 of them. He said softly, "Why, Your Excellency Dark God still didn't come this time? I've been friends with the Dark God for a long time, but I've never had the chance to meet him. What a pity." This sentence was sarcastic. At the same time, it reminded him that he knew the truth about them. The arrow god smiled lightly. "Actually, if Your Majesty hadn't emphasized again and again, I'm afraid that even the 4 of us wouldn't have come together this time." The arrow god wasn't exaggerating. Since time immemorial, the elven race had never sent out any of the 4 elven gods for external affairs. This already represented the seriousness of the matter and the importance of it. They rarely sent out more than 2 of the 4 elven gods, but today, they sent all 4 elven gods. They really took this meeting very seriously and couldn't be any more serious. And they were also very vigilant. The saint's eyes became especially sharp. "Your Excellency Arrow God, today, you've regained the Elven Emperor's seal. There's only a fine line between you and the Elven Emperor. Why don't you put in more effort?" The arrow god sneered. "Not necessarily. The Elven Emperor's seal of our race. Is it really with Shui Leihan?" The sage's complexion became solemn. "I understand your distinguished archer god's way of thinking very well. As a fellow martial artist, I deeply understand that after battling with an opponent of the same rank, both sides will be evenly matched. He had met a great talent. Especially since the other party is so open and aboveboard, it's completely understandable that you feel a sense of mutual appreciation. If it were me, I would do the same." However, the elf race has always been far away from the heavenly imperial court. They have been fighting for a long time, so they have very little information about the current experts. Let's not talk about others, but Donghuang Shui Leihan. What kind of cultivation did he have? What kind of cultivation did he have? What status? What background? The sage raised his head and arrogantly looked at the 4 people in front of him. "Do your excellencies really know what I've mentioned?" The 4 elves were at a loss for words. They were speechless. The elf race had always stood aloof from worldly affairs and was self-sufficient. However, the other meaning of self-sufficiency was that they were ill-informed and ignorant of everything in the outside world. Naturally, they did not know about Shui Leihan's information. This was something that could not be helped. Given the status of the 4 elven gods, there was no way they would argue in such a situation and embarrass themselves for no reason. If they knew, they would not be ill-informed during the final battle and suffer such a huge loss. Do you know how many secrets there were behind Shui Leihan becoming the East Emperor back then? Do you really think that a poor person like him can achieve meteoric success and become the East Emperor just by relying on his big fists? The sage sneered. Do you know how many powerful forces were behind Shui Leihan for him to be able to shake the world back then? How did they create momentum for him? For him to become famous? Do you know all these? The arrow god muttered in his heart, which celestial emperor didn't do this when he ascended to that position? Is this very strange? But I can't deny that I really don't know all these. Do you know how many schemes were behind the East Emperor to become the #1 person after Die? How could he make the others after Die willingly submit to him? The descendants of Die are all outstanding people of the current era. Which one of them is easy to deal with? Which one of them is not proud and arrogant? Which one of them is not tough and domineering? But why did they all submit in the end? Admit that Xue Leihan is the #1? I believe you also don't know how many schemes were involved when Xue Leihan became friends with Zihao back then. With the sworn brother of the second person in the world and the master of a celestial emperor himself, with such powerful support, why did Zihao still die after such a long period of time? Why did Zihao rather die in battle than break out? What was the purpose of hoping for a chance to make a comeback in the future? Of course you don't know. Back then when the Purple Cloud Heavenly Emperor died in battle and the entire Purple Cloud Heavens fell, how many conditions were involved in the exchange of benefits? And you can't even imagine how much of the exchange conditions Xue Leihan had. What benefits were involved in this? And how much of these benefits did Xue Leihan take for himself? As the sage of the Heavenly Imperial Court, I am in charge of the world. It can be said that the Heavenly Imperial Court is mine, and the Purple Cloud Heavens is also my territory. But why was I unable to send out troops back then? Why was I even criticized and framed for this? They said that I was guilty and didn't help when I was in danger. Do you really think that this is just a simple rumor in the pugilistic world? That such a rumor can destroy my reputation as a sage to such an extent? That I would be condemned by everyone and bear infamy for 1,000,000 years? What kind of irresistible force is behind this that is pushing this process forward? Do you all know? In these millions of years, too many strange things have happened. How could there be no reason? Long before the aristocratic queen met with her misfortune, why did the demon emperor, as the #1 expert of the demon race, lose when the demon race fought for the demon emperor heavens? There was a mastermind behind this. The reason for this is extremely simple. It's just that the demon emperor had the strength and power to compete for the #1 position in the Heavenly Imperial Court, and he also had a peerless demon empress. Do you all know that on the surface, Xue Leihan only had one empress, and she died at a young age? Ever since then, the East Emperor didn't get close to women and focused on managing the affairs of the Eastern Royal Heavens, which was praised by everyone. But you all will never know how many wives Xue Leihan actually had in secret. How many confidants did he have? How many people in the Heavenly Imperial Court endured humiliation and still kept women and children for their enemy even after being cuckolded? It's even harder for you to imagine how many descendants Xue Leihan had. Countless. Now, do you all know how many things you don't know? The saint looked at the 4 fairy gods in disdain. The fairy race has been isolated from the world for too long. You all don't know anything at all. Just for a mere battle, you gave up your principles and forgot about your hatred. Should I praise the purity of the fairy race experts, or laugh at your stupidity? Do you all know that there are so many heavenly armament pavilions in the Heavenly Imperial Court, and the oldest person in charge is only in his early 20s? The saint sneered. Archer God, can you do what they are doing now when you were their age? If there was one, it could be explained away as a genius. But everyone is like this. Don't you think it's suspicious? They are all young people in their 20s, but they are unstoppable in the Heavenly Imperial Court. Step by step, they have a meteoric rise. The scale of the development of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion is like bamboo shoots after the rain, like a flash flood. Without extremely huge financial and material support. Even if you are the Archer God, can you achieve half of this achievement? Do you all know that the power of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion is about to occupy the entire Heavenly Imperial Court? Do you all know where the Heavenly Armament Pavilion came from, and how it could rise so quickly? If those children of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion really took over this continent, do you all know what kind of consequences it would cause? How can you be so sure that the heavenly armament pavilion will cause less trouble than the extraterrestrial demons if they take over the continent? Where did you all get such confidence from? Who gave it to you? You all don't understand the reality of the situation at all. The other party only used a few words to sow discord, and you all were provoked to turn around and make things difficult for me, even questioning me face to face. The saint sneered. Putting everything else aside, why didn't Shwe and the Demon Empress, the two great experts, do anything about the massacre of the 10,000 saints celestial spirits today? Do you all really think that only the Mountain River Sword can destroy the 10,000 saints celestial spirits? The Grand Orient Sword and the Demon King's Hook are also rare divine weapons. Can't they destroy the 10,000 saints celestial spirits? The saint sneered. That's a complete joke. As the fairy race, you all are naturally kind and pure. You always think of others in a positive light. I don't blame you for that. I'm also not surprised that you all were deceived by others. Because this is your greatest strength, and also one of the reasons why I value you all the most. Because the Imperial Court is in danger, and I urgently need allies like the fairy race, even more than before. What you don't know, don't understand, and don't understand, I'm willing to explain it to you and let you all understand it clearly, the saint said firmly, but the only thing I find strange is, why didn't you all wait for the truth to be revealed before coming to find trouble with me? Why did you have to make the 4 fairy gods move out at the same time to face me in this situation where right and wrong are unclear? Have you all already confirmed that I'm the one you want to eliminate? Or do you fairies really think that I, Cloud Master, as the only saint who has ruled the Imperial Court for 2 million years, can actually deceive you all without any integrity? You'd rather believe in Shwe words than believe in my sincere words. You all can't wait any longer. Could it be that only Shwe is worthy of your trust, and I, Cloud Master, am not? Then, why isn't Shwe the saint? If he had such great prestige, why would the Saint Monarch be my Cloud Lord instead? Chapter 26-26. I told you about the final resting place of the Elven Empress and the current location of the Elven Emperor's seal. What did Shwe tell you? A few specious questions and a few guesses? You and Shwe just fought a battle and you're already appreciating each other? Just because you're a hero? You're a hero, so he has to be a hero too? The saint sneered coldly. Your Excellency Archer God, if that's the case, I can also fight with you. Furthermore, I can guarantee that I can make you suffer a crushing defeat and admit defeat wholeheartedly. It will be even more devastating than the battle between you and Shwe. Even more so. I'm a man of my word. Do you believe me on this? The saint laughed coldly, his face full of mockery and ridicule. He didn't show any mercy in his words. This long speech was basically pointing at the 4 elven gods and scolding them. But the 4 elven gods couldn't refute him at all. Yes, what proof do you have? None. What doubts do you have? You shouldn't. Just as the saint said, why do you trust Shwe so much? Why don't you trust me? And why? Shwe is the East Emperor, and I'm the saint. If I fought with Shwe just for you and lost, then I can also fight with you and make you suffer an even more thorough defeat that will make you even more convinced. What's the big deal about that? It's very easy. The elven god of archery didn't doubt that the saint had the ability to defeat him. Even the East Emperor had hidden his strength and defeated him with his real strength. The saint, whose reputation was above the East Emperor, must be even more powerful. Just the saint's shocking cultivation level of being able to slaughter countless divine true spirits in a very short period of time was enough. The elven god of archery had to admit that he wasn't as good as the saint. The saint was right. But why? On what basis? Judging whether someone was good or bad based on just one battle? It was indeed too childish. The 4 elven gods were all top experts, but at this moment, they were also very confused. Who was the one who was telling the truth? What exactly was the truth? So, please tell us, how can we find out the truth? The one who spoke was another king of the elven race, the god of power. That's right. What you're talking about is something that happened a long time ago. Even if we wanted to investigate, we wouldn't be able to. The god of archery took a deep breath. But what we need to do now is to find the crux of the problem. We just need to know the truth. Nothing else matters. There had to be a truth behind everything, as long as the truth was revealed. The truth came to light. Who is right and who is wrong will be clear at a glance. Who is more trustworthy will be known by then, and on this point, I hope that the holy sage will not be stingy with his guidance. The four elven gods bowed together. You've finally brought the topic back to the main point. The sage's face stiffened, and he deeply sighed. This matter can't be sorted out with words. It was unclear, but there was a key that led to the truth. However, this is a matter of great importance. It depends on whether you have the guts to do it or not. May I ask what kind of hub it is? The four deities asked together. At this moment, the expressions of the four elves became extremely tense. His words had finally come to a point. Perhaps in the next moment, all the truth would be revealed. There are three paths to the truth. You can choose. The sage stretched out 3 fingers. He said softly, "There are 3 paths to choose from." The four deities were shocked. Yes, there are 3 paths. One of them is Shui-Lei-Han. The other one is the Demon Empress and Yaroshin-Er. The sage smiled and looked at the 4 of them provocatively. As expected, the 4 deities' faces darkened. For a moment, no one spoke. Indeed, the problem had returned to the original point. When the sage first found the elven race, he pointed the spearhead at the Eastern Emperor Demon Empress because of the Elven Empress and the Elven Emperor's seal. Now, his target was still these 2 people. What was the difference from before? Perhaps the only difference was that he was forcing the elven race to be officially hostile to the Eastern Emperor Demon Empress. Seeing that the 4 elven deities didn't speak, the sage was obviously a little disappointed. I've told the archer god before that the Elven Empress fell because of this adulterous couple. The Empress was killed by Shui-Lei-Han himself. This is the result of my investigation. I can't force you to believe it or not. You've also said that it was a long time ago and it's hard to find any evidence. However, there's another piece of evidence on Shui-Lei-Han. The Elven Emperor's seal. The Elven Emperor's seal? The 4 elven deities were shocked. Regarding the death of the Elven Empress and the blood feud, the elven race naturally wouldn't let it go. However, the Elven Emperor's seal was of great importance. No clue or opportunity could be missed. Yes, the Elven Emperor's seal is in Shui-Lei-Han's hands. If you can find the seal in Shui-Lei-Han's hands, it'll be the best evidence and the truth will be revealed. On the other hand, if Shui-Lei-Han doesn't have the Elven Emperor's seal, it'll be my slander. As a man of character, there's nothing he can't tell others, the sage said righteously. Since the sage has said so, we're half convinced. This method is indeed feasible, but the Eastern Emperor's strength is unfathomable. Could it be that the 4 of you aren't confident in dealing with Shui-Lei-Han? Even if the 4 of you aren't strong enough, don't you still have the dark deity to help you? The sage said. The archer god recalled his battle and said, "There's still a doubt about this. Even if we really go against the Eastern Emperor, we'll still focus on capturing him. However, I've already understood his strength from the battle. If Shui-Lei-Han intends to escape unscathed, even if we attack together with the dark deity, we might not be able to hold him back, let alone capture him. Then, what if the target is the Demon Empress? As long as the Demon Empress is in our hands, the Eastern Emperor can exchange the Elven Emperor's seal. The result will be the same. The sage asked. That's also impossible. The archer god smiled bitterly. The Demon Empress and the Eastern Emperor's strength are at most 1 level apart. If we can't deal with the Eastern Emperor, the result will be about the same if we deal with the Demon Empress. Not to mention the fact that they have 7-star guards protecting them and have the fortune of heaven and earth on them, it's impossible for us to capture either of them. Especially after Yu Xin's defeat, we really don't have the face to attack him again. The archer god and his 3 brothers smiled bitterly at each other. To be honest, they didn't want to say that either. Saying that would be showing weakness. However, what was even more undeniable was that they felt a lot more relaxed about not having a direct battle with Shuelayan after showing their stance. Thinking of the elegant Eastern Emperor, that pair of eyes that seemed to be able to see through the heavens and see through the world, the archer god had an impulse to not be enemies with him. Indeed, the Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress can't be captured easily. The sage's eyes narrowed slightly. If he could, he really wanted to kill these 4 elves with his palms right now. However, he could only go along with them now. Because once the negotiation fell apart, the situation would only be worse for him. Fortunately, we still have a choice, and that's the last option. The sage took a deep breath, and his expression was serious. That person is Chu Yang. As long as we have him, we can also force the Eastern Emperor to hand over the Fairy Emperor's seal. The 4 of you may not be confident in dealing with the Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress, but you should be confident in dealing with this junior, right? Of course, the sage wouldn't tell the 4 elven gods that the strength of this junior, Chu Yang, was simply unimaginable. He was almost on par with Donghuang Shuelayan, and might even be above him. How could the 4 elven gods, who didn't even have the confidence to deal with the Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress, possibly deal with a certain king of hell? In fact, compared to Shuelayan and the Demon Empress, the person that the sage wanted to get rid of more now was Chu Yang, Minister Chu. The pressure that this person brought to the sage actually far exceeded that of the Eastern Emperor and the Demon Empress. Apart from being ridiculously strong, he was also the common boss of Jiyu Duxing, Dong Wushang, Xie Danqiong, Ao Xieyun, and all the members of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. What did this mean? What did this mean? Different from the ignorance of the elves, the sage's heart was very clear. This directly proved one thing: as long as Chu Yang was willing, a single word from him could set off an unprecedented storm in the entire Heaven Imperial Court. Although the sage himself didn't want to admit this fact, he couldn't deny that Chu Yang had already reached such a pivotal position without him being aware of it. His 3 brothers had already become newly ascended celestial emperors. As for Jiyu Duxing of the Big Western Sky, after he left, Wu Yequang definitely wouldn't be his match. In addition, there was the Demon Emperor Heaven, where the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's headquarters was located, and the Eastern Emperor Heaven, which had a close relationship with the Demon Emperor Heaven. Plus Chu Yang was already equivalent to grasping the power of this world. What kind of concept was the combined power of this world? Just thinking about it made the sage shudder. Or it could be said that the power that Chu Yang could now unleash was even greater than the sage. Even more terrifying. And this kind of terror, Shuelayan and Demon Shin hadn't caused such pressure to the sage in these millions of years. Perhaps only the Zhao of those years could give the sage such pressure, but even the Zhao of those years couldn't compare to the current Chu Yang. Therefore, Chu Yang was the person that the sage's heart wanted to get rid of the most urgently. Number 1. Irreplaceable. With Chu Yang around, the sage couldn't sleep or eat, as if there was a thorn in his back. As long as the 4 elven gods or 5 elven gods schemed against Chu Yang, no matter who lived or died, it wouldn't matter. The result would definitely be an all-out war between the elves and the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. This result was the one that the sage wanted the most, and also the one that he was most happy to see: Chu Yang. The 4 elven gods all spat out this name at the same time. Their expressions were all different. That illegitimate son of the Eastern Sovereign and the Demon Empress? The arrow god frowned. Yes, it's him. The sage said indifferently, this is also one of the effective ways to solve this problem. As long as we capture Chu Yang, or even kill him, everything will come to light. Chapter 26-27. At that time, as long as we have Chu Yang in our hands, even if it's just a corpse, we can make the East Emperor Demon Empress submit. The whereabouts of the Fairy Emperor's seal will be immediately known. As for the revenge of the Empress, it will naturally be clear. At least half of this ancient mystery can be solved. The saint squinted his eyes and smiled faintly. With Chu Yang in our hands, regardless of whether he's dead or alive, the East Emperor Demon Empress will be at a loss. The arrangements made by the East Emperor and the Demon Empress all these years will all be for naught. I believe that no one will be able to remain clear-headed after such a serious blow. At that time, as long as we use some tricks, everything will be clear. And this direction may be the last chance for the fairy race to take revenge, and also the last chance to rise up. It's also the last effective entry point. The saint finally finished. He slowly exhaled and said, "Of course, if you're still worried about your relationship with Xue Leihan and your own identity, and are unwilling to take action against a junior, then I won't force you. After all, this is an important matter for your race. As for my side, even without the help of the fairy race." The saint stood up, with a soaring arrogance, and said lightly, "I'm still the Saint Majesty who rules the heavenly imperial court. This is something that no one can change in the past. It won't change now, and it won't change in the future." The Arrow God and the others looked at each other. The saint naturally had his reasons for what he said. For so many years, no one could shake his position. Perhaps he really didn't have to worry. However, the whereabouts of the Fairy Emperor's seal was related to the future survival of the fairy race. The saint could ignore it. But could they really ignore it? Since that's the case, then, we'll be responsible for capturing Chu Yang alive. When the Arrow God said this, he almost used up all his strength. Even his tone had a hint of shame. No matter what, he was still someone of the same level as Xue Leihan. Now, he had to gather the strength of several people to deal with Xue Leihan's illegitimate son, deal with a junior. This, inevitably felt like bullying the weak. It was an unfair victory. More importantly, it was also a little unfair. If they had any grievances, they could just look for Xue Leihan directly. What was the point of bullying a child? However, things had already reached this stage. Other than this, there was no other breakthrough point. For the fairy race's future. Even if it went against his conscience, even if it was despicable, he had no choice but to do it this once. At this moment, the four elven gods all felt rather embarrassed. He was embarrassed, but he was still struggling and hesitating about the immorality of doing this. They shouldn't have done it, but they didn't consider that even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to do it. What if he couldn't do it? What would the consequences be? The four of you. I still have to remind you. The sage said solemnly, this Chu Yang is a genius that the Eastern Emperor Demon Empress painstakingly taught. His strength is no small matter, and you must not underestimate him. Otherwise, you will surely suffer a great loss. Since the four of them had already agreed, the sage had to emphasize Chu Yang's strength. If these four fellows underestimated each other and made a mistake, then they would be done for. The four elven gods smiled bitterly. No matter how powerful that little guy is, he's still too weak. He can't possibly surpass Xue Leihan, right? There are no absolutes in this world. The sage let out a long sigh and said, Chu Yang, this person. He has always been unfathomable. At such a young age, he is already a top expert. Furthermore, he has never shown his true strength. His strength has always been a mystery. Even I, every time I mention this person, I also. Just as the sage said this, his complexion abruptly changed. Immediately, his entire face turned pale. In a moment of absent-mindedness, he spat out a mouthful of blood. With a smack, that mouthful of blood landed on the ground and actually shot a deep hole in the ground. As the sage spat out blood, his body actually became unstable. He swayed violently before he managed to stand firm. The sage knew that things were not good. He didn't dare to be negligent and immediately closed his eyes to regulate his breathing. His expression was really as ugly as a dead person's. Another doppelganger had died. The sage immediately realized it. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to be in this state all of a sudden. At this moment, the hatred in the sage's heart had already reached the point where it was about to explode. He clearly felt that he had gone through untold hardships, used all means, and suffered all kinds of humiliation to allow his doppelganger to escape. However, for some reason, it was killed halfway through. This was simply an unbearable blow. Especially since this time, it was even more serious than the previous time. Not even the slightest bit of his true spirit had returned. He had completely and thoroughly lost contact with it. This meant that his divine spirit had already been completely destroyed by someone. The sage's heart felt as if it was being twisted by a knife. It was unbearable, but it was also really painful to the point where it was better to die than to live. However, at this moment, he still didn't dare to do anything. He was only afraid that these four would see through his flaws. He could only immediately circulate his energy to calm himself down and stabilize his mind. Otherwise, he was afraid that even his own body's cultivation would be affected. Therefore, he really didn't dare to say another word. Upon seeing this, the four elven gods were all overwhelmed with shock. At this moment, there was a feeling that their souls had almost left their bodies. The shock was, of course, that the sage had suddenly spat out blood. This number one person in the imperial court had spat out blood without any warning or reason. However, what was even more shocking to the four elven gods was that, before the sage had spat out blood, he had just said such a sentence. This person, Chu Yang, has always been unfathomable. At such a young age, he's already a peak expert. Moreover, he has never shown his true strength. What his true strength is has always been a mystery. Even I, every time I mention this person, also, before he could finish this sentence, he had already spat out blood. What did this mean? At the same time, the four elven gods had an unimaginable and inconceivable thought. Did this mean that, even the sage, the number one person in the imperial court, would immediately spit out blood every time he mentioned Chu Yang's name? Fuck. This, the four elven gods only felt their hair stand on end. All the hair on their bodies stood on end. This was too frightening. It was only mentioning his name, but even the sage, who was widely acknowledged as the number one person in the world, would spit out blood from the backlash. This was simply unimaginable. What exactly was this Chu Yang's cultivation? What kind of person was he? For a moment, the four of them looked at the sage with some lingering fear and anger. Sage, you're a fucking bastard. You actually want us to capture such a terrifying person? You might as well send us to our death. Because, if we went to deal with the East Emperor Demon Empress, we wouldn't be in danger if she escaped. However, the person we're targeting now is a terrifying person who can make a peak expert like the sage spit out blood just by mentioning his name. Isn't this person's cultivation already at a level that we've never dreamed of before? It was truly unimaginable what kind of terrifying cultivation this was. Master Yoon, you're fucking tricking us, right? For a moment, the four of them actually had the same thought. All they could think of was this. There was really no way to not be suspicious. After circulating his energy for a moment, the sage, whose body and mind had recovered slightly, almost couldn't help but spit out blood again. Because when he saw their expressions, he knew that they must have misunderstood. However, this really couldn't be avoided. It seemed that this unforeseen event had come too coincidentally. They had just mentioned Chu Yang's name, and it was such a sentence, and he had spat out blood just at the right time. It was so coincidental that the sage wanted to spit out another mouthful of blood just thinking about it. Just because of that one look, the blood in his chest surged again, and he almost couldn't suppress it. The pain in his body, mind, and divine soul had reached a level where he would rather die than live. However, this misunderstanding had to be resolved no matter what. Otherwise, how would these four elves dare to deal with Chu Yang? How would the follow-up plan be carried out? The sage endured it, took a deep breath, and said in a low voice, "The four of you don't have to worry. My current injuries have nothing to do with that Chu Yang. It's just that when I was dealing with the myriad saints' true spirit just now, my vital energy went astray and I suffered some internal injuries. In addition, my old injuries haven't healed yet, that's why I'm like this." The four elven gods were stunned. "We didn't see you injured." The elven archer god was at the scene at that time. When the sage went on a killing spree, he didn't encounter any capable experts at all. The only three powerful ones were killed by the Eastern Emperor, the Demon Empress, and himself. If he could still get injured in that situation, and such serious injuries at that, it could only mean one thing: the sage was nothing more than this. He didn't live up to his title as the number one in the imperial court. This really has nothing to do with that Chu Yang. The sage smiled bitterly. If Chu Yang had really reached the point where I would spit out blood at the mention of his name, no matter how conceited I am, I would have surrendered long ago. Look, when I mentioned Chu Yang, I didn't spit out blood, did I? How can there be an expert who can injure people at the mention of his name in this world? It's a fantasy. The sage explained with difficulty. The 4 elven gods expressed their agreement, but they were still criticizing in their hearts. Indeed, we haven't heard of such an expert, not even a legend. It's just that, with your current state, it's not as good as spitting out blood. The sage endured the monstrous pain, and spoke until his mouth was dry. Finally, he explained clearly. This made the 4 elven gods determined to find trouble with Chu Yang. At this point, the sage finally heaved a sigh of relief. The 4 elven gods were also helpless in this matter. This matter concerned the rise and fall of the elven race. They would rather kill the wrong person than miss this opportunity. No matter how awesome Chu Yang was, they had to give it a try. Otherwise, how could they watch the elven race be destroyed? With the plan settled, the 4 elven gods took their leave. Looking at the 4 elven gods walking out, the sage held on for a while, but still couldn't hold it in. He opened his mouth and spat out a lot of blood. Chapter 26-28. This was something that could not be helped. No matter how profound his cultivation was, the sudden loss and destruction of his spirit was no small matter. Moreover, he had already killed all the 10,000 saints' true spirit bases here. Otherwise, he could have gained some nutrients and greatly reduced the time needed to recuperate. But now, he could not say anything. Helpless, the saint could only consume the treasures in his hands. But his heart was filled with endless fear and anger. Who exactly killed another one of my doppelgangers? How would he know that the main culprit who killed another one of his doppelgangers was the person he had just declared to have nothing to do with his injuries, Chu Yang? When Chu Yang and the rest arrived at the southern sky forest, everything had already ended. Most of the people who had gathered here had already left in 2s and 3s. Most of those who remained here were cultivators with relatively low cultivation bases. They were rummaging through the ruins in 2s and 3s, hoping to find something valuable. Donghuang Qianghua and the rest could not have cleaned up so thoroughly. When Xie Danqiong entered, he had indeed only taken the best quality items. In such a huge 10,000 saints true spirit base, even the best quality items were already a shocking amount. Xie Danqiong was not like Chu Yang, who had the tribulation space and could store as many items as he wanted. The remaining items were of relatively ordinary value. Xie Danqiong was not interested in them. The other peak experts were also in the same situation. So everyone left. But for martial artists below the saint level, the items left here were still very valuable. So, everyone rushed in to search for treasures. It seemed that they had really gained a lot. Looking at the scene in front of him, Chu Yang was truly puzzled. Isn't this the location of the battle between Dong Huang and the Arrow God? Why has it become the base for the destruction of the 10,000 saints' true spirit? No. Right now, this place is basically a bustling city. What's going on here? After asking a few questions, he finally understood. It turned out that the battle between Dong Huang and the Arrow God had actually caused the entire southern sky forest to be uprooted. That was fine. The problem was that there just so happened to be a 10,000 saints true spirit base under the ground. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? Even a novel would not dare to write such a thing, right? It was so coincidental that it made one's hair stand on end. Even Chu Yang and Mo Tianji. When they first heard about this matter, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded, flabbergasted, and dumbstruck. No wonder. No wonder they met a Saint Monarch's doppelganger on the way here. And it was a Saint Monarch's doppelganger that was running for his life. It seems like the traces of the myriad holiness true spirit were suddenly discovered here, and the Holy Monarch happened to be here. Demon Empress Demon's doppelganger and Saint Monarch's here, with so many people watching the battle. So, Saint Monarchs, Saint Monarch. Saint. So he had no choice but to do it himself. Kill everyone here, and do it as fast as possible. Don't leave anyone alive. This way, even the 3 magicians will die in this round. However, it was precisely because of the Saint Monarch's intervention that the clone had the opportunity to escape. Moreover, it just so happened to encounter us. This is truly too coincidental. Mo Tianji said, I reckon that the 3 great devil masters guarding this place might not have died in the hands of the saint. They most likely died in the hands of the East Emperor Demon Empress or other experts. The saint had to make use of them to create a certain amount of chaos to create a chance for that clone to escape. That makes sense. I believe that although it's not too far away, it's not too far away either. If that's the case, Sage Monarch's myriad holy true spirit base is now 2 out of 3, and only 1 remains. Chu Yang took a deep breath. A base of this scale, and one that was built in secret, I believe that it would be impossible to build it without hundreds of thousands of years. Yes. Mo Tianji said, so the only hidden danger now is the last 10,000 saints true spirit base that has yet to be found. There are also the 10,000 saints true spirits that have already been scattered out in the martial world over the years. Perhaps this portion is the hardest to find. Chu Yang sighed and said, that's right. These people have already taken root in this world. As long as they don't take the initiative to reveal themselves, no one will know that they are the 10,000 saints true spirit. Even if they die, very few people will be able to tell that something is amiss. This is the 10,000 saints true spirit. This is the most unbearable part. This is indeed the most troublesome part, but there's still the easiest way to solve it. Mo Tianji said, as long as the Saint Monarch can be killed, then the gap will be blocked from the source. After that, even if they are the 10,000 saints true spirits, it's equivalent to being freed. After death, the true spirits will have no place to return to and can naturally enter the cycle of reincarnation, the spring of rebirth. Chu Yang's eyes lit up, and he said, that's right. As long as the Saint Monarch is killed, everything will be fine. Mo Tianji smiled bitterly. Killing the Saint Monarch is easy to say, but it's easier said than done. He paused and said, if I'm not wrong, the majority of the top experts in the Saint Emperor Palace are of the 10,000 saints true spirit type. Or perhaps, all of them are. If I were the Saint Monarch, I wouldn't let these people go. Mo Tianji said, they are so obedient, so loyal, and so easy to manipulate. Wouldn't it be a pity to let them go? Even if the Saint Emperor Palace has as many experts as there are clouds, how many of them would be left after spending more than 1,000,000 years to gather them? Mo Tianji looked at Chu Yang. Chu Yang's face sank. Yes, at the very least, the upper echelons of the Saint Emperor Palace should have been completely wiped out. And this also explains why the Saint Monarch's prestige did not diminish after the defeat of Zi Xiaotian, and why no one in the Saint Emperor Palace doubted him. Yes, according to common sense, the incident back then was so tragic. No matter how ruthless the Saint Emperor Palace was, there should be a few loyal people who would step forward bravely. However, the situation back then was really contrary to common sense. The East Emperor once said that when he went to find the Saint Monarch to settle accounts, he was actually besieged. Even after he revealed his identity, the attacks did not stop. Mo Tianji said, this mystery has been solved. Everyone heaved a long sigh. Solving the mystery for a long time made everyone feel even more depressed. The Saint Emperor Palace was the most sacred and inviolable place in the Heaven Imperial Court. Now, it had completely become such a place, filled with 10,000 saints true spirits. What kind of ironic reality was this? Let's go to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Chu Yang and the others flew up and left quickly. Just halfway there. Suddenly, there were several extremely powerful auras in front of them. Chu Yang instantly became alert. He waved his hand to signal. The brothers immediately regained their composure and did not look as anxious as before. Almost in the next moment, they saw 4 people rushing over from the opposite side at lightning speed. The 4 of them were extremely handsome. The only difference between them and ordinary people was that they had pointy ears. Chu Yang was not unfamiliar with this kind of appearance. He was used to seeing them in the Heaven Imperial Court. However, there was only one in the Heaven Imperial Court. Here, there were 4 of them. These people were all elves. Chu Yang had a good impression of Duke Yu. However, he did not have a good impression of the elves in the Heaven Imperial Court. During this period of time, he had cried because of the rumors made by these people. He had become their illegitimate child. No one would feel good if they were in his shoes. Only these 4 elves had a heavy look on their faces. Their expressions were extremely serious. Just looking at them would make one feel depressed. They seemed to have a lot on their minds. Seeing that Chu Yang and the others were right in front of them, the 4 of them were slightly surprised. However, they only took one look and actually took the initiative to open up a path. They flew off from both sides. One of them could faintly be heard saying, "If they are really so powerful, I'm afraid that even if we join forces, we will still be in danger. Don't you think so?" At this point, the 4 of them had already gone more than 10,000 feet away. Nothing could be heard anymore. Chu Yang and the others were greatly shocked. The most conservative estimate of the 4 people who went over just now was that each of them was at the level of Di and Empress Di. Even if they couldn't be compared to the Demon Empress of the East Emperor, they definitely wouldn't be inferior to Dong Wushang and Luo Kedi's level. Furthermore, there were a few of them working together. This was already a rather tyrannical battle force. Chu Yang reckoned that even if it was him, it would already be very lucky to be able to keep his life when facing these 4 elves, and such a group of experts was actually discussing how to fight against the enemy. Furthermore, it was even if we join forces, we will still be in danger. This sentence was too shocking. With these 4 people working together, even if the Demon Empress Dong Huang encountered them, she would probably avoid them. She would definitely not rashly face them head-on. However, these 4 people actually felt that they would be in danger when they joined forces to deal with someone. Then, who was the person they were going to deal with? Who could be so powerful? Judging from their strength, the target is very likely to be a Saint Monarch. Mo Tianji said, but even if it's really a Saint Monarch, judging from the situation when they fought with the clones previously, they also don't have the ability to make these 4 people feel that they would be in danger. Even if they can't defeat them, it's not a problem for them to retreat unscathed. Yes, the 4 of them working together is almost equivalent to 4 Demon Empresses or East Emperors. This is not even taking into account the degree of tacit understanding between them. Chu Yang frowned. But who exactly are they talking about? Chapter 26-29. There's no way the Saint would allow such a threatening opponent to exist. Besides, they're still in their honeymoon period and won't fall out with each other for the time being. Could there be such an earth-shattering expert in this world? Why haven't we heard of him before? Mo Tianji said, that's right. However, even if we haven't heard of him, the East Emperor Demon Empress should know. Why didn't they mention him? This doesn't make sense. Could it be that they don't know? Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and they were all a little worried. Everyone felt that this mysterious expert who suddenly appeared was extremely mysterious and confusing. Especially when they didn't know whether he was friend or foe, they didn't know how to deal with him. Of course, Chu Yang and the rest didn't know that these 4 elves were the 4 elven gods and that the mysterious and powerful figure they were talking about was Chu Yang himself. If he knew, Minister Chu would probably burst out laughing on the spot. The 4 elven gods would never have thought that among the group of young men and women who passed by, one of them was the one they were deeply afraid of, and the one they had to deal with. Chu Yang. These 2 parties actually brushed past each other without any sparks, and neither of them knew each other. Archer God, I was only thinking about how to deal with Chu Yang just now and didn't pay attention to those little fellows. They seem to be very powerful. The human race is really full of talents. In the entire elven race, even when the Empress was still around, we didn't have such outstanding seedlings. The power god turned back and looked at the empty sky in the distance. Sigh, it's already so late. You still have the mood to care about whether they're powerful or not. Don't create unnecessary trouble. The archer god was a little dejected. A group of young men we randomly met has such profound strength. The Celestial Imperial Court is really not a place where people like us can survive. I hope we can successfully get the Elven Emperor's seal this time and defeat the extraterrestrial demons. I'll retire from this world and never get involved in worldly affairs again. This Celestial Imperial Court suddenly feels full of danger. For hundreds of thousands of years, I've never felt such danger. But now, I feel more and more threatened. This is really a strange feeling. Yes, there are many things that I thought I've already seen through clearly. But after coming into contact with the truth, I realized that there are some secrets behind it. Human thoughts are really too complicated and too strange. The other three shook their heads and sighed at the same time. If it was just a game of force, the elves might not be afraid of anyone. But now, in just a few short days, even the high-level elves like them had developed a subtle feeling of infinite fear towards the schemes of humans. Unfathomable. Unfathomable. Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Zi Xiecheng glared fiercely at Xie Danqiong, who was tied up like a meat dumpling. Her gaze was exceptionally ferocious, as if she wanted to swallow him whole. Xie Danqiong looked like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. He lowered his head and looked pitiful as he admitted his guilt. "Do you know your mistake now?" Zi Xiecheng was furious. She shouted, "You just went out like this. If something happens, how am I going to answer to your brothers? How are you going to explain this to your big brother? How was he going to explain this to his sister-in-law? How could he treat Danfeng?" Before he could finish his sentence, Xie Danqiong lowered his head and said, "I was wrong. You're wrong." Zi Xiecheng, who was furious, was suddenly stunned. For a moment, he actually felt that his anger had been blocked. He couldn't vent his anger, or rather, he had nowhere to vent it. After a while, he suddenly shouted, "You're wrong. You still know your mistake. What's the use of knowing your mistake? What's the use of telling me? Do you think I won't beat you up just because you say you're wrong? Dream on." Then, he shouted again. Puff puff puff, punches and kicks. Xie Danqiong screamed exaggeratedly and rolled around on the ground like a rubber ball. But he was lamenting in his heart, "I came at such a bad time. Even if I met Bu Tian Suo or Qianxian, I wouldn't be so unlucky. At least she didn't have to be so violent, right? This big sister Z is really too violent. I already admitted my mistake at the first moment, and she still beat me up. Sigh, boss is so pitiful, humph, what's the use of admitting your mistake?" Zi Xiecheng said angrily. "If I don't beat you up properly, you won't learn your lesson. Let's see if you still dare to do it." She continued to beat him up. Crackle crackle crackle. Xie Danqiong wanted to cry. "I'm wrong. I won't dare to do it again. I'm really wrong. I'll change, I'll do it, okay, help." The new Jade Flower Emperor Xie Danqiong finally couldn't help but cry for help. He really couldn't take it anymore. It was really too painful. "Big Sister Z, you're really an expert at beating people up. You especially hit the most painful part. Did you learn this from boss?" At this moment, a voice suddenly said, okay, we're here to save you." "You're saved." Xie Danqiong stared blankly for a moment. He was pleasantly surprised. Heaven has opened its eyes. However, a thought flashed through his mind, and he instantly realized who the speaker was. His smile froze on his lips. "I'm screwed this time. An even more ruthless person has arrived." No, a group of even more ruthless people. As expected, a series of voices sounded again. "Help? Okay, then I'll save you first and continue to beat you up. You despicable Xie Tu. Today, I'll make you a living rabbit. Damn you. You need to be taught a lesson. Beat him up hard. No need to save me face." Another voice said, "Big sister, you're tired. Take a rest first. Wait for us to teach him a lesson. Today, we must beat him up into a pulp. Flowers bloom. Jade flower doesn't bloom either. Beat him up." Along with this voice, there were already 3 people who rushed up like hungry tigers and took over Zi Xiecheng's beating job. They were Jimo, Luo Kedi and Rui Butong. Xie Danqiong didn't even know how to shout for help now. He was scared silly. big sister could still hold back a little when beating people up. There were still some places where she was embarrassed to call for help. But these three. Why were they here? There was no such thing as embarrassment for them. Zi Sheqing turned around and saw that Chu Yang and the rest were already standing at the door, rubbing their fists and watching Xiedan Qiong get beaten up. Even Chu Yang, who always maintained unity, and Mo Tianji, who always looked at the big picture, didn't stop them this time. They were even eager to give it a try. Boss. Xiedan Qiong just called out twice, but Ji Mo had already used his sleeve to cover his mouth. Beat him up hard. Chu Yang said these three words. Then, he looked at Zi Sheqing with a beaming smile and said very gently, "Are you okay?" Even the best face-changing master in Sichuan opera would have to admit defeat at the speed of this face-changing. Zi Sheqing snorted and said, "If your brothers didn't make me so angry, I would be better, for sure." Chu Yang laughed and said, Yes. Aren't there already people helping you vent your anger? Let's go, it's too messy here. Let's go inside and talk." Then, Tai Butian, Mo Qingwu and the other two gathered around Zi Sheqing. Everyone chatted for a while and was extremely affectionate. "Why did you all suddenly come back? Have you settled everything over there?" Zi Sheqing smiled. "Wasn't it because I heard that something happened over here? Why didn't I rush back?" Chu Yang flattered. "Chmph. What a coincidence that all of you are together. Also, Ji Mo and Luo Kedi, didn't you stay behind to help Jiu Duxing? Why did these two guys also come together?" Chu Yang sighed. Then, he grimaced and said, "Originally, the two of them were left for Jiu Duxing as helpers. But, they caught up with us after we left for half a day. It can't be helped. These two guys are most afraid of Jiu Duxing. Moreover, Bu Liuqing has also recovered. So, they were directly driven out by Jiu Duxing." Zi Sheqing couldn't help but laugh. "I see. Actually, everyone knew in their hearts. Jiu Duxing would never drive out these two big helpers. But the heavenly armament pavilion of the big western heaven had already recovered a lot. Most importantly, the experts of the Saint Monarch and Saint Emperor Palace had basically all left the big western heaven. As for the remaining ones, Jiu Duxing and Bu Liuqing were confident that they could completely deal with them. And the Demon Emperor Heaven's side was the most important at the moment. Jiu Duxing was only afraid that Chu Yang and the rest weren't strong enough, so he drove Ji Mo and Luo Kedi out to help. Everyone knew and understood this kind of intention. Listening to Xiedan Qiong's groans and screams outside, rising and falling one after another, Zi Sheqing was actually a little worried. "It's about time. Don't fight and cause trouble. I'm not afraid of injuries, but don't hurt your own brother's feelings." It's okay. Mo Tianji was calm. "We all know, we won't hurt our feelings." Just as he finished speaking, they heard a loud boom. They could see Mo Yuntian's Jade Flower Emperor being kicked into the air like a ball. Ji Mo flew up and sent out another kick. The landing point was right on Xiedan Qiong's buttocks. Xiedan Qiong flew to the other side like a meteor. Luo Kedi stretched out his fist and kicked. With a roar, he kicked Xiedan Qiong to the other side like a rubber ball. On that side, Rui Butong yelled excitedly. With a big kick, he kicked him back. Everyone's eyebrows jumped fiercely. "Fuck. This is really explosive." Puff. Xiedan Qiong finally struggled to spit out the ball of cloth in his mouth and shouted, "The three of you wait." Out. After a long time, Xiedan Qiong was dragged in by the three panting people. He was loosened and his cultivation was restored. The moment Xiedan Qiong regained his freedom, he wanted to jump up and fight Ji Mo to the death. "I'm so angry. No matter what, I'm still a celestial emperor. The three of you actually kicked me like a rubber ball. You don't take me seriously at all." Chapter 2630. Ji Mo coughed and raised his head to look at the sky. He didn't take Xiedan Qiong seriously at all. Xiedan Qiong was stunned by this. Could it be that there's another trick waiting for me? He didn't dare to act rashly. Mo Tianji coughed and broke the deadlock. Xie Danqiong, this is just a joke. After all, we are brothers. Xie Danqiong was so angry that he wanted to die. I've been kicked like a ball, and it's still a joke. How can there be brothers like this? Mo Tianji laughed mischievously. Haha, this is far less funny than the jokes you've made with us these days. For almost a month, all of us were kept in the dark by you. If the archer god's cultivation was a bit higher, we wouldn't even be able to collect your corpse. Don't you think this is funny? Xie Danqiong heard this and immediately became like a deflated ball. He looked at Chu Yang and Mo Tianji's unfriendly faces and couldn't help but sit down. He raised his hand and said, I was wrong in this matter. I was stubborn. You're sensible. Mo Tianji snorted, if you don't admit your mistake, I'm afraid Big Brother will personally take action. And me, we won't be as easy to deal with as Jimo and the others. We'll just lightly kick you a few times and be done with it. Xie Danqiong quivered and said, cough cough, this matter is actually not that dangerous. How about I invite everyone to drink? To apologize to everyone? A certain someone who had been beaten up was rushing to treat him to a drink as an apology. Everyone burst into laughter at once. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji wanted to keep a straight face and intimidate someone. But they really couldn't control themselves and laughed together. At noon, the brothers gathered at a table. They drank until the sky turned dark. They drank from noon until midnight. The next morning, Jimo, Luo Kudi and Rui Biu Tong were lying in the courtyard with bruises all over their faces. They didn't know when Xie Danqiong had taken his revenge. Xie Danqiong was still dressed in white. He sat on the recliner and looked at his three brothers who had been beaten up by him with a refreshed expression. I say, how did you do it? Isn't it too amazing? Even Chu Yang was somewhat puzzled and couldn't understand. At present, Jimo, Luo Kudi and Rui Biu Tong were not weak. Xie Danqiong was bound to lose in a 2-on-1 situation. Not to mention 1 against 3. But the result was the other way around. Naturally, it was puzzling. Yesterday afternoon, I asked Le for some knockout powder. Xie Danqiong said proudly, all of them were knocked out at once, and were restrained together. Then, he beat them up one by one. Beating him up is not bad, right? The rest of the people were all laughing and laughing together. Early in the morning, the Demon Empress and Dong Huang learned of Chu Yang's return and came to pay a visit together with Yarrow Ningning and Bai Shixian. After everyone discussed for a while, they finally couldn't help but shift the topic to the myriad saint's true spirit. 2 of the 3 major bases where the saint cultivated the 10,000 saints' true spirits have already been destroyed. Shui Leihan frowned. But there's still no news about the remaining one for now. If we don't get rid of this base, it will always be like a fishbone stuck in our throat. Actually, it's in the clear sky heaven. It's said that a similar phenomenon has happened before, but Ao Xie has been doing his best during this period of time, but he hasn't found anything. The Tianji intelligence under my command has also been searching for such information, but it's also to no avail. Mo Tianji said. Not only that, there's also the myriad saints' true spirits that have already been scattered in the martial world. Once those people hide in the crowd, there's no trace of them at all. Mo Tianji said, Tianji would like to ask the 2 seniors about another matter. What is it? Say it. The Demon Empress and Dong Huang said at the same time. That is, as long as someone kills the Holy Monarch, those myriad saints' true spirits that are still in the mortal world will lose their function as true spirits. They won't fall due to the loss of their true spirits, and will only exist like ordinary people from now on? Mo Tianji asked cautiously. This matter needs to be confirmed. Shui Leihan and the Demon Empress looked at each other and said, according to our understanding, that should be the case. But, we can also be sure of another thing. If the Saint Emperor is really dead, then, he won't allow the rest of the 10,000 saints' true spirits to remain in this world. He will definitely kill them all at the last moment before he dies, and they will all die together. Why? Chu Yang said, according to the rumors, if the owner of the myriad saints' true spirit takes the initiative to kill the myriad saints' true spirit, won't he be unable to get the benefits that he deserves? That's what the average person thinks. Shui Leihan smiled. But, according to what we know, if the saint kills all the myriad saints' true spirits at once in a critical moment, of course, he won't be able to keep all of them for his own use, but at that moment, he will still be able to collect 10 to 20% of their original power. If the saint doesn't encounter any danger, then he will naturally not do something like losing 10 to 80% of the power that he has painstakingly cultivated for no reason. But, if he really encounters a life and death crisis, and his close clones are all destroyed, even if it's only 1 to 20%, he won't think it's too little. No matter how much he loses, he will still gain something. If he really dies, everything will be over. It's obvious which is more important. So, as long as the saint dies, all the myriad saints' true spirits will disappear along with him. That's for sure. The demon empress said decisively. I see, that's indeed the case. Chu Yang lowered his head silently and calculated carefully. He said, then, can I understand it this way? Even if it's only 1 to 20% of the power, it will still be able to support the saint when he's at his weakest and return to his peak state in an instant, or even beyond that. That's right. The demon empress also did some calculations. Although this deduction is shocking, it's still very reliable. Because the amount of the myriad saints' true spirits that have been accumulated for tens of thousands of years is simply too much. In fact, if it weren't for this concern, I've also discussed with the Eastern Sovereign that the two of us should join forces to eliminate this scourge in one fell swoop. However, after careful consideration, the two of us might be able to suppress the Saint Monarch if we join forces, or even pose a fatal threat to him. But, it's impossible to truly eliminate him. The trump cards that he has left behind are simply too many. Just the myriad saints' true spirits alone is enough to make all of our arrangements and plans useless. Everyone fell silent. Just to deal with a Saint Monarch who was at his peak state, everyone would probably have to pay a considerable price to eliminate him. But, if they were to beat him to a certain extent and victory was in sight, and he suddenly recovered to his peak state, then, what awaited their brothers would definitely be a calamity. If that's the case, we have to make additional preparations, Chu Yang said as he frowned. Chu Yang frowned. He slowly calculated and said, if he really recovers when he's at the end of his road, and if he recovers to his limit, then, even if we can kill him in the end, at least a few people on our side will be buried with him. And those who are dragged to the grave by him will definitely be the main force on our side. Even if it's just 1 or 2 people, the losses still outweigh the gains. Also, after this battle, even if we achieve a complete victory and the Saint Emperor Palace is completely wiped out, I'm afraid we'll still have to pay a considerable price. Needless to say, everyone will be injured, and we might even lose a few experts permanently. It's equivalent to more than half of the peak battle strength of the Heaven Imperial Court being wiped out. If we want to deal with the extraterrestrial demons that are about to arrive, the higher-ups will probably have to face a far worse situation. You must know that the extraterrestrial demons, their strength is still very intact, and they basically haven't suffered any losses. Xue Lehan pondered quietly and said, but now, if we want to kill off the Saint Monarch, it's impossible to do so without paying a price. Chu Yang persisted and said, but it's precisely because of this that I don't want to pay this price. In order to kill this Saint Monarch, I won't let any of my brothers die. I can't afford to pay this price. He was deep in thought. Mo Tianji hesitated for a while and said, Big brother, we still have the heavy pill. This thing has limited effects on increasing cultivation, but it has miraculous effects on reviving one's soul, prolonging one's life, and even recovering one's vitality. This is something that no elixir in the Heaven Imperial Court can compare to. As long as it's used properly, the effect may not be any worse than the 10,000 saints' true spirit, Chu Yang said. I've also considered this problem, but our cultivation is already too high now. If it's just reviving one's soul and prolonging one's life, it's fine. But in battle, even the super version of the heavy pill can't replenish much of one's vitality. Even if it's not a drop in the bucket, it's still not far from it. At most, it can only replenish 1/10 of one's physical strength. This is already the limit. Mo Tianji frowned and said, to be able to replenish 1/10 of one's vitality is already a rare elixir. If the effect isn't good, we can use quantity to make up for it. Another advantage of the heavy pill is that there's almost no resistance to it. One pill can replenish 1/10 of one's vitality. What if we eat 10 pills in one go? Chu Yang smiled bitterly. 10 to 15 pills in one go can instantly restore all of one's peak cultivation. But, if that's the case, I'm afraid there will be repercussions. Mo Tianji interrupted and said, the issue of repercussions is indeed debatable, but if we don't use the heavy pill, the chances of being dragged to the grave will undoubtedly increase greatly. Then, we might as well bear the backlash of the heavy pill. Choose the lesser of two evils. This is already the most ideal strategy for now. Everyone nodded deeply. They all felt that Mo Tianji's words were very reasonable. But Chu Yang was still hesitating. He wanted to win, but he also didn't want his brothers to pay such a heavy price. Even if it was only a possibility of a backlash, he didn't want it to happen. Because, overusing the heavy pill in one go would indeed result in a backlash. And it wouldn't be light. Chapter 2631. The heavy pill contains the power of creation, so it's different from ordinary elixirs. It can be taken multiple times, and the effect won't be reduced. Chu Yang pondered. And taking it all at once won't cause too much of an impact. I once took one at a time, and there was no backlash. However, at that time, he had used the method of self-detonation to release all of his power in one go. So I couldn't feel it. But this time, we can't use that method again. Last time, he was lucky enough to come to that mysterious place. But this time, he definitely wouldn't be so lucky again. Even if he had it, it was impossible for his brothers to have it too. Although there was an impact that time, it didn't cause too much damage. So whether there will be a backlash, and how big the backlash effect will be, is still unknown. Chu Yang said, give me 3 days. I'll try it out personally before deciding on the final action strategy. He finally made up his mind. I say, let me do it. Jimo stood up. I'll do this experiment. Everyone's gaze froze for a moment. Then, Luo Kedi, Xie Danqiong and Rui Butong all made their requests. Let me do it. I have an immortal body, so this shouldn't affect me. I'm the most suitable candidate. Rui Butong strongly requested. Everyone knew that the experiment Chu Yang was talking about was to take the 15 heavy pills mentioned earlier and really try it out. Were there any side effects, or rather, to test how big the impact was and where the limit was. This was undoubtedly a very dangerous thing. If something went wrong, their meridians would be severely damaged, and if it was serious, they would be in danger of dying. How could the brothers bear to let Chu Yang take the risk himself? All of them fought to be first. Everyone, don't fight. Chu Yang shouted. He said angrily, if I let all of you take the risk whenever there's any danger, then what's the use of me as a big brother? It's precisely because I'm afraid all of you will be in danger that I came up with this extreme method. I'm afraid all of you will be in danger. Instead, I'll let all of you take the risk. Isn't that going against my original intention? Everyone stopped talking. All of them lowered their heads, their eyes somewhat sparkling. This is my big brother. Xue Leihan and the Demon Empress looked quietly at the scene of the brothers fighting and couldn't help but sigh. Brothers like this, they were real brothers. This kind of friendship was a truly moving emotion. Stop fighting. Seeing that his brothers still wanted to fight, he shouted, stop fighting. Mo Tianji said, who among you understands the characteristics of heavy pills better than Big Brother? What's more, what if something unexpected happens and boss has a way to deal with it? Do you have a way to deal with it? There was no reason for them to swarm up and show off. All of you, quiet down. Jiu Duxing wasn't here, and Chu Yang insisted on experimenting on his own. Therefore, Mo Tianji was now the one with the most authority. All the brothers hung their heads. Although they were still a little unhappy, they didn't say anything. Mo Tianji's words were undoubtedly reasonable. It's settled then. Chu Yang stood up. There's no time to lose. We must start preparing now. Let's find a place to fight. Let's fight until I'm exhausted. Cough cough cough. Jimo and Luo Kudi's eyes flickered as they quietly slipped away. Beat you to the point of exhaustion? Then wouldn't the two of us have been tortured to death by you? This kind of self-torture, they definitely couldn't do it. The two of them had just retreated when they were stopped by Chu Yang and Mo Tianji's sharp eyes. It doesn't matter who is missing. Neither of you can escape. Jimo and Luo Kudi wailed at the same time. Big brother, there's no room for discussion. Mo Tianji's face was stern. I'll join too. Mo Qingwu was eager to try. Me too. Zi Sheqing had never fallen behind. Me too. Once Chu Le opened her mouth, everyone felt a chill. The little girl rolled her eyes and chuckled. I won't use poison. That's good enough, right? Hearing that, everyone finally heaved a sigh of relief. As long as you don't use poison, everything is fine. If poison is used, then it's better for everyone to stay away from it. You and your elder brother can go and play by yourself. Us too. Tai Bu Tian and Wu Qian also stood up. Along the way, their strength had improved by leaps and bounds. They had already reached the level of saints. Although there was still a considerable gap between them and the average strength of most people, they weren't so weak anymore. We can't always hide behind you. Tai Bu Tian smiled and said, I'm also a little tired of hiding behind the scenes and strategizing. We have to see a real battle. Chu Yang grinned and said, all right. He didn't object because Chu Yang knew that this was an inevitable outcome. At the same time, it was also a necessary process. If Tai Bu Tian and Wu Qian couldn't improve as soon as possible, they would be left far behind. Not to mention other things, just their lifespan wouldn't be able to keep up. There was no need to even mention anything about eternity. The two of us will join in the fun too. Otherwise, young Chu's strength is still not easy to exhaust. It's better to settle this quickly, isn't it? The Demon Empress and Dong Huang smiled, looking as if they were here to help too. At this moment, Chu Yang's face finally collapsed. You'll join in too? Then, after this battle, the duration will be reduced by a lot, but at the very least, I'll be skinned alive by you guys. Looking at the opponents in front of him, Chu Yang immediately regretted it. Mo Tianji, Jimo, Luo Kudi, Sai Niang, Chu Le, Mo Qingwu, Zi Sheqing, Rui Bu Tong, Xiedan Qiong, Demon Empress, Dong Huang, and Tai Bu Tian and Wu Qian. Chu Yang thought, with this lineup, even if Qian and Bu Tian aren't top-notch experts and can be ignored, with just the remaining 11 people, it's as if I'm facing all of Di, Empress Di, and Holy Monarch at the same time. And it includes the most powerful Dong Huang and Demon Empress. Mo Tianji and the rest are much stronger than the weaklings of Di and Empress Di. Chu Yang looked up to the sky and sighed, frowning. The evils we bring upon ourselves are the hardest to bear. Why do I feel like I've dug a hole and buried myself? With such a strong lineup, is it to help me do an experiment? It's enough to directly beat me into smithereens, there's too much to spare. Everyone laughed. We're helping you. Don't be afraid, there's no use in being afraid. At this time, even if you scream yourself hoarse, no one will care about you. Chu Yang wanted to cry but had no tears. Seeing this, Xiedan Qiong actually felt a great sense of satisfaction. He couldn't help but gloat at Chu Yang's misfortune. Because he immediately recalled that when Dong Huang and Demon Empress captured him and handed him over to Zi Sheqing to be executed, they seemed to have said to him, we're helping you. Now, he finally saw someone in the same situation as him, and this person was the boss. The cycle of heaven, retribution, it's really satisfying. It's really too satisfying. Ha ha ha. Xiedan Qiong was overwhelmed with emotions. For a moment, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. But immediately, he saw Chu Yang's murderous gaze looking over at him. He had no choice but to cough as if he was looking for an illness. His heart was as silent as a cicada in winter, for fear that a certain someone would settle the score with him. Everyone's plan was set. Zi Sheqing arranged for Meng Wuya and Chrysanthemum Saber King Li Guanyu to take care of Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Then, everyone set off together. Zi Sheqing left Heavenly Armament Pavilion to take care of Heavenly Armament Pavilion. It could be considered as leaving a super peak expert behind to ensure safety. This should be foolproof. Everyone set off in a mighty manner. Just as they left the campsite, the saint immediately received the relevant news. So many people went out at the same time. The saint frowned. That means Chu Yang is back. Yes. Where are Dong Huang and Demon Empress? Yes. They went to Southern Sky Forest together? Yes. The saint asked around and finally stopped asking. He started to walk. Southern Sky Forest is now the territory of the elves. If they go there, I should be able to keep most of them busy. And the elves will only deal with Chu Yang and his women. In this way, there shouldn't be any accidents, as long as this plan succeeds, and even if Chu Yang doesn't die on the spot, as long as any of the 4 elven gods or any of Chu Yang's women are finished, it will create a deadly feud between the elves and Heavenly Armament Pavilion and Demon Empress Dong Huang. In the future, even if the elves know that I'm the one who instigated everything, but this feud is destined to be irreconcilable. They can only continue to cooperate with me and even be fully used by me. The more he thought about it, the more pleased he became. The saint immediately ordered, "Men." The elf archer god and the rest were now in a circle, discussing how to deal with Chu Yang. But suddenly, news came. Chu Yang and the rest were rushing to Southern Sky Forest. This was a heaven-sent opportunity, they must not miss it. Saint Emperor Palace was mobilized to support the elves in one battle. Hearing this news, the archer god jumped up. So fast. What a coincidence. The first thing he felt was not surprise, but horror. For some reason, he felt that this was a deliberate move. They just came up with a strategy, and we immediately received news of Chu Yang's return. The archer god frowned. This is too much of a coincidence. What followed was Chu Yang's portrait sent by the saint. They opened it. The 4 elven gods were stunned. Chu Yang was dressed in black, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was tall and handsome. Although it was just a portrait, Chu Yang's eyes seemed to have seen deep into his own eyes. This master of painting that the sage had found was indeed an expert in this field. The portrait was so vivid and lifelike. But the archer god and the rest were not surprised by this. This young man, isn't he the one who stood in the center of the group of young people that we met yesterday? Thinking of this, the 4 of them could not stay calm. Chapter 2632. So, we met each other yesterday. But we didn't know each other at all, so we missed the opportunity. What are they going to do in the southern forest? A gloomy voice asked from the shadows. I don't know. The archer god was stunned. Who else is going with them? The gloomy voice asked again. This. The archer god was a little embarrassed. In the shadows, a gloomy voice sighed and said helplessly, Boss, you. The archer god's face turned red. He bared his teeth and said, Bastard. Can you stop talking? Will you die if you don't talk? The dark shadow was speechless. The eerie voice belonged to the dark god, who had yet to make an official appearance in the elf tribe. He was much younger than the archer god and the others, but he was blessed by the heavens as he was one of the few dark elves in the elf tribe. His innate darkness attribute allowed him to hide himself seamlessly at any time. But it was also because of his dark attribute that he developed a strange habit. He was never willing to be exposed to the sun. He even rarely appeared in front of others. Even these brothers who relied on each other for survival could only count the number of times they saw him after he achieved great success in his cultivation. Since it has come to this, let's go. The archer god looked at the 3 brothers and said to the dark shadow, Just the 5 of us? Are you afraid we won't be able to do it? The mighty god hesitated. Just the 5 of us are enough. The archer god smiled proudly. Even if we are facing the holy monarch, with the strength of the 5 of us, we can defeat him and make him flee. In this world, is there anything that the 5 of us can't handle? The dark shadow. The dark god's gloomy voice said, That's not necessarily true. If the 5 of us fight God and Queen at the same time, we will definitely be the ones to flee. The archer god was furious and scolded, "Shut up. This guy really touched the pot that didn't boil. Fight god and queen at the same time? Aren't you kidding? Let's not talk about the 5 of us, even if there were 5 more, it would be a draw. At most, it would be a draw." And this was under the condition that god and queen had a grudge against each other. The dark shadow and the dark god laughed. Therefore, the 5 brothers immediately set off for the southern sky forest, going back and forth to the southern heaven forest twice in 2 days. This kind of experience could be considered as one of the most miraculous things in his life. However, what the arrow god and the others did not expect was the words of the dark god. It actually came true. This time, not only did they have to face an expert who was equivalent to Die and who at the same time, but the strength they faced this time was actually much more terrifying than facing Die and who at the same time. Of course, they definitely didn't know anything right now. Otherwise, he wouldn't have insisted on bumping into it. That would be idiotic. Chu Yang and the others set off ahead. So, they naturally entered the southern heavens forest first. After passing by the dilapidated base where the myriad holy true spirit once resided, everyone continued to advance. This was because such a battle had to be fought to their heart's content in order to truly obtain the results of the experiment. And, this result could only be achieved when Chu Yang was at the end of his life. Therefore, the location was also very important. Firstly, it was too powerful, so they had to find a remote place to avoid accidentally killing people. Secondly, they had to prevent anyone from causing trouble and taking advantage of the situation. Dong Huang and the Demon Empress followed to prevent such things. Of course, the third point was what Mo Tianji and Dong Huang had discussed along the way. Was it possible to make today's experiment into a trap? Another key point is it possible that the saint will come? If he doesn't come, everything is just empty talk. The Demon Empress was a little worried about this. He will definitely come. After this period of interaction, Chu Yang's fear towards him is even greater than before. I'm afraid that his fear of Chu Yang has already surpassed that of the 2 of us. Just look at how he has bewitched the elf clan and set his sights on Chu Yang and us. Xue Leihan said with certainty, he will definitely not let go of such an opportunity. Not only will he come, he will definitely take action to vent his anger from the humiliation he suffered today. I think this is the real purpose of Chu Yang's experiment today. At the side, Mo Tianji smiled knowingly. Dong Huang was indeed Dong Huang. He even thought of this. This. What do you mean by this? What is the real purpose? The Demon Empress was confused. Chu Yang is trying to consume an excessive amount of heavy pills this time, and the precondition is that he has exhausted all his energy. To achieve this condition, the most effective way is to have an opponent that he can vent all his energy on. With Chu Yang's current strength, such an opponent, including you and me, is not enough, because he doesn't have the heart to fight with us. Only Cloudmaster is the one that we have to deal with. Xue Leihan said, therefore, as long as the saint takes action here, we can know ourselves and the enemy in the battle to wipe out the saint. The Holy Monarch is destined to be trapped in this situation. Xue Leihan said, the only thing that we are not sure about is, will the fairy race also be trapped in this situation? If the fairy race also enters this situation, then this situation will be considered complete. Mo Tianji said, a situation that will determine the fate of the Heaven Imperial Court. Regardless of friend or foe, it will be a decisive battle. But this situation is also a double-edged sword, and the risk that one has to bear is not small. Xue Leihan's expression was serious. Especially Chu Yang, the risk that he has to bear is the greatest. It can even be said that the risk that he has to bear this time will be unprecedentedly huge. If he is not careful, he may even get burned, and the gains will not make up for the losses. Mo Tianji nodded and took a deep breath. That's why all of you came together, as the last line of defense. Dong Huang smiled and nodded. Actually, there are still some flaws in this situation. We are missing 5 people. Mo Tianji said, we are missing Jiyu Duxing, Dong Wushang, Ao Xieyun, Mo Lei and Tan Tan. If these 5 people were also here, then today's battle could directly kill the saint. There would be no more risks to speak of. Speaking of this, Mo Tianji was also somewhat helpless. According to the latest news, Tan Tan, who had gone missing for a period of time, had actually made great progress in his demonic cultivation. After he counterattacked and defeated the Flaming Sun Heavenly Emperor Long Yinghuan, he did not take the world he was in seriously at all and brought his wife directly to the Purple Cloud Heaven. Furthermore, he directly charged into the first bridge of the Purple Cloud Heavens and became the first and strongest line of defense against the extraterrestrial demons. The first and strongest line of defense built by Tan Tan was not purely to defend against the extraterrestrial demons. On the contrary, this line of defense was the most incisive line of defense for counterattacks. During this period of time, or more accurately speaking, after Tan Tan's arrival, the gold-robed heavenly guards had no chance to attack at all. All the extraterrestrial demons that came to the first bridge were killed, defeated by Tan Tan. As long as the extraterrestrial demons came, Tan Tan would charge forward excitedly as if he had taken an aphrodisiac. Not only would he defeat them, but he would also kill them all and chase them for 3,000 miles. That's why he came back unsatisfied. Of course, Mo Tianji and the others knew that Tan Tan was not doing this to be in the limelight, but to do his best to use battle to train himself. But if he were to go alone, he would be taking on too many risks. It was too risky. If he was not careful, he might really not be able to come back. As the invasion of the extraterrestrial demon army became more and more severe, there would definitely be more and more opportunities for the top experts to appear at the front lines. The chances of Tan Tan encountering enemy experts would also increase accordingly. Tan Tan's temper could not be pulled back, so the chances of danger appearing were not small. Xue Leihan's heart also trembled when he heard that. Yes, the lineup of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's higher-ups that appeared now was already a super powerful lineup that was comparable to the combined might of the First Emperor and the Empress. But there were also a few people who were ranked at the front of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's combat power who were not here. Among Chu Yang's brothers, Dong Wushang, Jiyu Duxing, Tan Tan, and Ao Xieyun were only below Xie Danqiong in terms of combat prowess. They were even above Xie Danqiong. Now, almost everyone could reach Xie Danqiong's current level. Dong Wushang and Jiyu Duxing were probably slightly stronger, especially Jiyu Duxing. Since he comprehended the power of the two extremes of earth and water on his own back then, his strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Even if his strength was not as good as Chu Yang's, it would not be too far off. At least, he was at Xue Leihan's level. Thinking of this, Xue Leihan couldn't help but sigh endlessly. How many years has it been? Back then, Brother Jie seemed like a joke. Now, he already has enough power and can totally dominate the entire Heaven Imperial Court. At the same time, Mo Qingwu, Zi Sheqing, and Chu Le surrounded Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian in the center. They instructed in a low voice, "If anything happens later, the 3 of us must pay attention. Chu Yang may not need our strength, but we must take good care of ourselves. Don't give them any misgivings and let them take care of us instead. No matter what, Sister Butian and Sister Qianqian will be fine," Mo Qingwu promised solemnly. Chu Le nodded with bright eyes. "Don't worry. Later, I will set up a poison screen around the 2 of them. If no one provokes them, then it's fine. But if someone doesn't know their place, I don't think there's a need for a poison screen." A very strange feeling arose in Zi Sheqing's heart. Instinctively, she stopped her. Everything should be based on our own defense first. If there's a layer of protection like the poison screen, we will have an additional layer of protection in our hearts and will inevitably slack off. Hearing this, Chu Le was a little disapproving. She didn't understand what Zi Sheqing meant, but she still agreed. She secretly made up her mind. I must put in all my effort and do everything possible to ensure the safety of the 2 sisters-in-law. Chapter 26-33. Along the way, although everyone's speed was very fast, Everyone could feel that everyone was trying their best to control their speed and didn't really exert their speed to the limit. Moreover, along the way, Xie Danqiong and Rui Butong were whispering at the side, as if discussing something. The 5 women were also huddled together, and Ji Mo and Luo Kedi were also huddled together, discussing something. Everyone's expression was very nervous. Mo Tianji, who was in control of the overall situation, also gathered together with the East Emperor Demon Empress, constantly deducing and calculating, thinking about whether there was anything missing. Only Chu Yang, who bore the most risk, was the most at ease. He took the lead and flew in front. The gust of wind blew his hair up. It also made his thoughts drift along with the wind. As he walked all along the way, his mind was completely clear, and there was no shock, terror, joy in it. Ever since he went to the big western paradise and saved Jiyu Duxing from danger, until today. Chu Yang had a feeling more and more. It seemed that his path in this world was gradually coming to an end. This didn't mean that his death was near and his road ahead was coming to an end, but that he could feel that the Heaven Imperial Court also had its limits. Outside, there was a wider world waiting for him. Actually, Chu Yang had this feeling before when he was at the Heaven Imperial Court. At that time, it was after he eliminated the Dharma Supreme and his strength climbed to the peak of the Heaven Imperial Court. Looking at the world, there was no longer any opponent. Or it could be said that it was a kind of loneliness of an expert. It was just that at that time, he still knew what his road ahead was. There was a higher Heaven Imperial Court, there were generations of brothers waiting in front of him, and there were also extraterrestrial demons waiting for him to destroy. And so on and so forth. But now, he had once again climbed to the peak of the Heaven Imperial Court. There might still be opponents ahead, but only the Saint Lord was an unprecedented enemy that he still couldn't match. But it was just like the Dharma Supreme back then. Chu Yang was confident that he would definitely be able to defeat him in the end. There was also the restless extraterrestrial demon army that was about to arrive. He had to completely destroy it and eliminate all future troubles. But what about after that? What should his next step be? It was just that this problem wasn't urgent yet. He could temporarily put it aside and think about it when the time came. Today, this time, he wanted to do this experiment on a whim and then intentionally or unintentionally set up this overall situation. In fact, this made Chu Yang feel that his footsteps had sped up again. At this point, Chu Yang could clearly feel that there was a whip called fate that was constantly whipping his body. Let himself either get rid of it or submit to it, but whether it was to get rid of or to submit, the only certainty was. But they all had to move forward. What was in front of them? What was there? Suddenly, a cloud floated past Chu Yang's eyes. Chu Yang woke up from his stupor, and suddenly rushed out of the clouds. However, he discovered that the group of people had already arrived in the sky above the southern heavens forest. Below, a stretch of green stretched to the horizon as if it was endless. Under the gentle breeze, this stretch of green was like the waves of the sea rising and falling. Chu Yang looked up to the sky, and let out a long and loud cry. His heart was suddenly filled with lofty sentiments. I was born to climb higher and higher. The heavenly palace of the mortal world is willing to work hard. Who can compare to the shuriken? Who could be the palm blade? Is there an end to the heavens? Looking at the mountains and rivers with a smile, tonight, I will sweep the path of the human world. In the future, we will test the heroes in the firmament. Ha ha ha. Chu Yang let out a long laugh. His black clothes were as black as ink, and he flew into the southern heavens forest. Behind him, the brothers heard Chu Yang's long chant, and their hearts were also boiling with lofty sentiments. They let out a long cry in unison, and it shook the sky. Big brother is so bold. Little brother will follow. Let's dance in the clouds together. Let's conquer the world together. The clouds in the sky dissipated in front of everyone, and they were all left behind. The boundless green waves also passed under their feet, and they were no longer seen. In the blink of an eye, the group of people had already gone deep into the southern heavens forest for thousands of miles. At this time, all they could see was green. Chu Yang suddenly stopped. Almost at the same time when Chu Yang stopped, A huge sword light flew out like a long dragon, and a strong energy flew out. Ka. Hundreds of thousands of trees were instantly cut down by the sword light, and the energy did not stop there. It swept up the chopped trees, and like a huge dark cloud, they all flew up with a whoosh sound, and flew for hundreds of miles before gently landing. However, the earth still trembled. Hundreds of thousands of trees collectively moved. How could the movement be small? The central area of the southern heaven forest used to be filled with greenery. But a large open space had suddenly appeared at this moment. Chu Yang had cleared the entire area in a radius of 50 kilometers. And the black and yellow soil had already been exposed underneath. Not even a blade of grass was left behind. It was completely clean. Everyone landed at the same time. Let's choose here. Chu Yang looked around, and the sword light flashed. Around them, some of the big trees in the blind spots were cut down again and swept away. The first time, the purpose was to clear the area, but this time, it was to guard against the elf race's sneak attack. Trees were the elf race's natural concealment tools, and they had to be careful. Mo Tianji stepped forward and was about to speak. But Chu Yang had already said softly, "Let's let nature take its course." Mo Tianji instantly understood. He did not speak anymore, and immediately retreated. Today, the original intention was to test the effect of taking a large amount of heavy pills in one go. Even if the Saint Monarchs did not come, this goal was achieved. If the Saint Monarchs and the experts of the Holy Emperor Palace came, then of course, it would be better. Let nature take its course. It did not matter whether they came or not. This was Chu Yang's intention. Mo Tianji suddenly felt that Boss's current state of mind was very different from before. The current Chu Yang had a kind of state of mind that was detached from the mortal world. Chu Yang was already standing in the center, and the Calamity Sword was already in his hand. Come. Who's first? Ji Mo suddenly saw a certain king of hell with the Calamity Sword in his hand, and could not help but want to shrink back. However, Xiedan Qiong kicked his butt, and he immediately flew out. He was completely disorganized as he pounced at Chu Yang. The one who did not want to fight the most was the first to fight. Ji Mo let out a strange cry and bared his teeth. "Xiedan, I'll remember you. I'll remember you forever." But before he finished speaking, a sword light had already attacked him mercilessly. The sword light was cold, as if this sword would cut off his head. Ji Mo let out a scream, and his back was drenched in sweat. "Boss, please have mercy. I'm not ready yet." As he screamed, he drew his sword to meet the attack. The two of them exchanged several blows in an instant. Ji Mo's butt had already been kicked 17 to 18 times by Chu Yang. A certain part seemed to be swollen, but Chu Yang still continued to kick without caring about it. A certain part was swollen, and he still had to kick it again. The pain increased several times. A certain person was in so much pain that he almost cried. "Awu! Dog aunt! I'll fight it out with you." Ji Mo rushed up like a madman, attacking with all his might. Then, on the other side, Luo Ku Di's howl shook the sky. "I'm coming too." Just as he was getting into position, Xue Leihan kicked him from behind. "Why are you still putting on such a dashing posture? Go and get beaten up." Luo Kedi flew up into the air, following in Ji Mo's footsteps. "Fuck, who kicked me? Who's so?" Even though he was busy, Luo Ku Di turned back to curse, only to see Donghuang smiling. "I kicked you, so what? Why don't you finish what you're saying?" "Ah, good kick." Luo Ku Di's neck shrank. "I was wondering why the kick felt so ingenious. So it was His Majesty Donghuang who did it himself. How impressive. Boss, watch my sword." When everyone saw Luo Ku Di changing his tune, laughter shook the sky. This guy was used to bullying the weak and fearing the strong. This habit seemed to have been deeply ingrained in his bones. Chu Yang roused his spirit. He single-handedly fought with Ji Mo and Luo Ku Di. The three of them fought like madmen. They didn't hold back at all. However, Ji Mo and Luo Ku Di's tacit understanding slowly began to show signs of strain. Seeing this, Rui Butong shouted and shook his head. I'm coming. Brothers, I'm coming to help you. He flew out and instantly turned into a majestic phoenix. That phoenix flew into the sky majestically. He thought to himself, I should be able to take less hits than Jimo and Luo Kudi if I attack from the sky. Chu Yang's eyes flickered, and his body flashed. Suddenly, a shadow flew into the air at an extremely fast speed. He grabbed the phoenix's sharp beak, and threw it with all his might. The phoenix's entire body was pulled down from the air. Bang! The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was suddenly heard. The whole ground was trembling because of it. The phoenix's huge body was thrown to the ground like a lifeless brick. It fell to the ground and its feathers flew everywhere. It screamed loudly. Chu Yang still didn't let Rui Butong go. He even used the phoenix that he had transformed into as a weapon and swept it in all directions. Jimo and Luo Kudi were suddenly faced with a new wave of fierce attacks. They were so angry that their noses were crooked. Damn it, Rui Butong, you stupid bird. Are you here to help us or to help boss? If possible, the two really wanted to grab this damn bird and pull out all its feathers. Why is it so useless? It's better to stew it and eat it. It can at least fill our stomachs. This was worse than before. Previously, the two sides were fighting sword with sword. Even though the Calamity sword was extremely sharp, Jimo and Luo Kudi's swords were also extraordinary. It was absolutely no problem for them to contend with the Calamity sword for a short period of time. Now, they were facing a human-shaped weapon like Rui Butong. Could they use their swords to parry and greet? They could only dodge blindly. It was inevitable that they would be at a disadvantage. It would be better if Rui Butong didn't come to help. Rui Butong groaned again and again. His mouth was grabbed and he had almost no room to struggle. With a thought, he turned back to his original form and broke free from Chu Yang's imprisonment. He opened his mouth and bit over. His target was Chu Yang's big hand. Chu Yang hurriedly retracted his hand. Rui Butong staggered and flew out dizzily. Chu Yang's Calamity sword reappeared in his hand. One sword, one round of rapid attacks, and the three brothers were sweating profusely. I will continue to write the 5th update. Chapter 2634. The few of you, hurry up and help. Luo Kedi was about to cry. He screamed at the top of his lungs. He had suffered more than 100 kicks in this short period of time. Not only his buttocks, but even his thighs were swollen. You guys are not helping. Do you think this is fun? The next moment, a viburnum flower flew out and instantly bloomed brilliantly. Xie Danqiong had made his move. Once Xie Danqiong made this move, the situation changed instantly. At least, it was no longer one-sided. Chu Yang was excited. He shouted, "One ray of cold light. 10,000 feet of light." As a ray of cold light flew out, 10,000 rays of light scattered and caught all the viburnum flowers in the sky. Not a single one was missed. Me too. Mo Qingwu floated up, her red dress fluttering like a dream. She performed a heavenly dance and her Qingwu dream saber slashed down like lightning. Just looking at this posture, no one doubted that even if there was a mountain in front of them, Mo Qingwu could cut it in half. But such a saber move, coupled with her superb body movements, made people feel a sense of dreamlike lightness and confusion. Chu Yang's tide-like attacks were finally stopped in an instant. Facing 5 experts at the same time was already reaching Chu Yang's current limit. Zi Xieching's white robe fluttered. In a flash, she arrived before Chu Yang. With 2 loud bangs, her fists landed accurately on Chu Yang's chest and lower abdomen. Chu Yang's entire body rolled out like a gourd. Everyone cheered when they saw this. Chu Yang quickly got up and used the first 4 moves of the Calamity sword together. He shouted, "Just hit the top, don't hit the bottom." Zi Xieching's last punch was aimed at the lower abdomen and seemed to be going further down. But it was the most important part. That was the most precious part of Minister Chu. It must not be hit. Zi Xieching's face was red. She gritted her teeth. "Why can't I hit it? See if I don't kill you." How dare you act like a hooligan in such a battle? All the brothers shouted together, sister-in-law, kill him. Sister-in-law, kill him. Especially Xie Danqiong, he shouted especially loudly. Chu Yang faced everyone at the same time. His strength was already at a disadvantage, and he retreated step by step. Suddenly, he shouted, I'm going to use my ultimate move. The sword light was like a waterfall, suddenly splashing out. The ultimate sword move of the Calamity Sword was finally used. A purple light flashed and Mo Tianji took out his purple jade flute. Big brother, I'm going to use this flute. If you can turn the tables so easily, you still have me. The 7 experts had attacked at the same time, and had pushed Chu Yang to his limit. Even if he had great abilities, it would be impossible for him to defeat the joint attack of these 7 people in one fell swoop. The lineup formed by Mo Tianji and the rest was almost equivalent to the combined strength of the other 8 people on Di's side, excluding the East Emperor Demon Empress. How could Chu Yang withstand it with his own strength? In the blink of an eye, his imposing manner had turned into a constant beating. Chu Yang desperately resisted, counterattacked, defended, and circled around. He could clearly feel it. The power in his body was gushing out like a flash flood. His own potential was also being stimulated bit by bit and consumed. At the same time, his dantian was operating at full power. However, now was far from the time when he couldn't hold on anymore. His dantian was still ensuring a very stable output. The pressure isn't enough. Chu Yang shouted loudly. Although if it was a real life and death battle, this was the problem. After all, this wasn't a life and death battle. They wanted to force Chu Yang to the point of exhaustion. This bit of pressure really didn't seem to be enough. The Demon Empress was delighted to see this and also attacked. Her white robe fluttered as she took a step forward. Then let me join in the fun and give you more pressure. It's not enough to see. After all, she was a veteran expert. Her attack was really extraordinary. Chu Yang instantly felt a lot of pressure. Bang bang bang, Mo Tianji's purple jade flute, Xie Danqiong's viburnum flower, Luo Kedi and Jimo's longsword, Mo Qingwu's Qingwu dream saber's back, Zi Xieching and the Demon Empress fists, and Rui Butong's kick. At the same time, they were attacking Chu Yang. Ouch! Chu Yang screamed and was sent flying by Qing Qing. He slid on the ground for more than 1,000 feet and plowed a deep trench in the ground. Since the Demon Empress attacked, this battle became more and more intense, in the true sense of the word. The Demon Empress originally didn't want to attack because of her status. The 7 of them, including Mo Tianji, had joined forces. Their true strength was indeed very strong. They had defeated the Emperor and the Empress, and the other 8 people had joined forces. With this strength, they were enough to kill any expert in the Heaven Imperial Court. Chu Yang would definitely not be able to resist them. However, this group of people acted as if they were playing house. They laughed, scolded, and made fun of each other. They did not pose much of a threat to Chu Yang, let alone threaten his life. The pressure wasn't great. Naturally, Chu Yang didn't have the mentality of fighting to the death that he wanted. Without that kind of pressure, even if he was really exhausted and consumed heavy pills, he probably wouldn't be able to achieve the kind of effect that he wanted. Therefore, the Demon Empress had no choice but to attack now. As for the other reason, she had already realized to her surprise that Chu Yang's real strength now wasn't inferior to Xue Leihan's. The real strength here was a combination of cultivation, skills, realms, experience, and so on. In other words, Chu Yang was basically another Donghuang Xue Leihan. The title of the third person in the Heavenly Imperial Court didn't live up to its name anymore. At least, it had to take a step back. The Heavenly Imperial Court actually had another real top-notch expert in the true sense of the word. However, the moment the Demon Empress attacked, the atmosphere of the scene immediately changed. It was poles apart. 8 experts joined forces to fight against Chu Yang alone. If they were really enemies, Chu Yang definitely didn't have any chance of winning. Even his chances of survival were very slim. The correct response would have been to flee far away the moment the Demon Empress stretched out her hand. But now, he couldn't do that. He could only hold on. He could only hold on. He could only hold on. Chu Yang already didn't know how many hits he had suffered or who had hit him. Many of his bones even showed signs of breaking. The pressure was as huge as a mountain. Wave after wave, it kept accumulating and pressing down on him. Chu Yang gradually felt that the pressure he was under was about to reach the point where he couldn't take it anymore. The nebula in his dantian was operating in an almost crazy way, triggering one vortex after another. They flooded into Chu Yang's meridians, and the tribulation sword was unleashed to its limit. However, even if it was unleashed to its limit, it was still useless in the face of the combined attacks of the 8 expert. No matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't break out. He couldn't hold on. Everyone also felt that Chu Yang was about to reach his limit. Mo Qingwu and Zi Sheqing's eyes were full of heartache and pity. However, the more it was at this moment, the more they couldn't relax. It could mean that all their previous efforts would be wasted. In the sky above the forest, Xue Leihan, who had been watching the battle closely, suddenly sensed something. He turned his head abruptly and narrowed his eyes. The wind and clouds were surging at the end of the world. A large group of experts rushed over at top speed. Xue Leihan's eyes instantly became extremely gloomy. He muttered, "People from the Holy Emperor Palace." It was also at this moment that the Demon Empress suddenly hit Chu Yang's chest with her palm. Chu Yang let out a loud cry and flew straight out. His whole body was really like a lamp that had run out of oil. He didn't have any energy left at all. He even found it difficult to raise his hand. It's about time. The Demon Empress looked at Chu Yang's condition and concluded. Mo Qingwu was so heartbroken that she was about to cry. "Chu Yang, are you okay?" Chu Yang smiled with difficulty. "As long as all of you are okay." At this point where his vitality was depleted and he was like a lamp that had run out of oil, Chu Yang suddenly felt that his spiritual senses were far sharper than usual. He, who didn't have any cultivation at all now, could even vaguely feel that there was an unprecedented spatial crisis swarming over from the horizon. "They're coming." Chu Yang forced himself to finish this sentence and then he was completely out of energy. This sentence, "As long as all of you are okay," it meant a lot. Not only today, but also in the future. As long as all of you are okay and can hold on during the final battle, or I'm okay and can hold on, then the brothers who are using heavy pills to recover will charge. Mo Tianji muttered this sentence, his eyes shining. When they reached the limit, it was time to take the medicine. Chu Yang didn't hesitate and stuffed all 15 super heavy pills into his mouth at once. This time, he was truly putting his life on the line. This was the first time he had taken the most heavy pills in one go. Because, imagining the sudden crisis of a Saint Monarch at the end of his road made Chu Yang uneasy all the time. If he didn't think of a way to deal with this crisis, Chu Yang wouldn't be able to sleep well. Because, if that was the case, at least 3 of his brothers would be dragged away to be buried with him in an instant. 3. How could Chu Yang afford to lose them? Not to mention 3, even if it was 1, Chu Yang didn't want to lose them. So he had to do this deadly experiment. Chu Yang didn't say the real danger. Because once he said it, everyone would definitely be worried. Chu Yang wasn't sure if he could take so many heavy pills in one go. Moreover, after this, he still had to figure out a way to release the excess medicinal effects. These were all difficult. As for whether he could maintain his consciousness after being hit by such a huge amount of medicinal effects, Chu Yang wasn't sure either. If he couldn't maintain his consciousness, then this method definitely couldn't be used. Dong Huang. A person took the lead and flew over. With a long shout, he shouted, "Let's continue the unfinished battle today." Nan Poyan. Your face doesn't hurt anymore. It must be that you haven't been slapped enough. You still want to relive the wonderful feeling of that day? Since you're so desperate to have it again, I can fulfill your wish. It's just that. Xue Leihan laughed coldly. You alone are not worthy of me taking action. All of you come up together. The person who came was the #1 Great Guardian of the Holy Emperor Palace, Nan Poyan. Continue to write. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.